the same. So what we're looking to do is we're looking to provide a major renovation to the main theater, which is what we all know right now. And then that upper balcony portion is where we will be introducing 2 new theaters, and ideally, 80 seats in each of those. What we will also get within this renovation is we're going to provide a new concession stand, new ticket booths, and new washrooms. So the lobby is going to get as much of a facelift as the rest of the theaters, and support spaces are as well. So just to kind of walk you through the plans and what our intentions are, largely the ticket area is going to stay in the same place. We're going to look at renovating some of the existing spaces into coat storage for staff. The entire concession area right now is going to occupy into some of those back washroom spaces, and then we're going to just basically give a nice big facelift, better cooking facilities, better storage for large-scale events and things like that. And then the washrooms is where we see the biggest upgrade from a functional standpoint, where we're going to be able to introduce 5 new unisex washrooms, 1 fully BCBC compliant UWR universal washroom. So for us, that's a big win in terms of the infrastructure for the theater itself. Then, as I said, we're looking at providing 2 new theaters. So for us, this is kind of where we would see the main focus happening first, where we're going to be able to introduce a small black box theater, which is going to roughly have about 81 seats within it. There'll be a little mini projector booth that's going to support this theater. And then what we'll be able to do with this reno is we have the opportunity to add another 2 washrooms on this immediate back floor. Then, as I said, we've got a third theater that's actually popping up in that back corner. So that's kind of what's driving this rental right now, is the ability to be able to carve out those back areas into additional spaces that could generate more viewing and more viewership within the theater itself. Then this is where we get into the reno of the major theater. And so just to step back a little bit, the existing vomitorium is going to remain as is. And so then what happens is you walk into this this shared corridor that's going to allow you to bring yourself back into theaters 2 and 3. But it's really, this becomes now the main focus of the reno, where we have the opportunity to introduce a barrier-free corridor, barrier-free entrances at dual points into this theater. So that's one thing that's different currently now. So that allows us to do a bit of a light lock and a bit of a sound lock to help separate these 3 theaters from each other. And unfortunately, I'll scroll back a bit just so you can actually see the floor plans themselves. But if you look in the top and bottom corner of these theaters, we're introducing these platforms, and that's a combination of the fact that we have to be able to get into these theaters with proper sound and light locks. And because of the slope of the theater, it means that anything that we push past the existing corridor as it is now is going to require a set of stairs. So that allows us to build a little bit of a bench in the top and bottom of this theater, which allows us to provide true barrier-free seating. So someone can enter the theater and they're on a bit of a raised platform with no threshold change. Then you'll have a little bit of a flexible, adaptable seating in each of these with a little bit of a raised platform behind, and then you'll have a set of stairs that actually brings you down to the theater floor. So it looks a little bigger than it is, but when you're actually looking at the sections and the full interior looks, it's actually quite a modest change. And in the end, we still are looking at providing over 220 seats, ideally 230 in this complete reno. One of the next little moves out of this that is kind of nice is we've got this little negative space that sits in between 2 and 3 and the corridor leading into 1. And that allows us to have a better treatment of garbage, compost, and recycling. So as you're leaving the primary exiting out of 2 and 3 and 1, we're forcing everyone to basically walk by the disposal area. So it actually would help with the garbage and waste disposal, and let's call it diversion in a sense, so that we can actually get proper cleanup in each of these theaters. Gives a little bit of a break to the theater staff themselves, but it gives us an opportunity to better adhere to some of the sustainability targets, food waste diversion, things like that the city's currently doing. And if we make it a primary focus, it gets to become a feature rather than a bit of an afterthought in the design of the theaters themselves. Lastly, this is just a bit of a diagram to show how exiting works, and unfortunately I'll say the square is not transparent in this model, but each of the theaters are essentially going to have 2 points of exiting. which all are going to basically lead you down to the lobby. So the backs of 2 and 3 allow users to head down the existing set of stairs that is currently being utilized by the Civic Theatre, and then you'll be able to have that front access point that gets you out into the main corridor, brings you down to the vomitorium, and then allows you to exit out the front door. It's hidden as well. In the drawing here, you'll be able to see that. You could imagine that you'll be able to use that same exiting point that comes out onto that dual stair from Theatre 1, but then you also have those 2 access points that would get you into the vomitorium again. So even if you're looking at Theatres 2 and 3, in theory, if there's a true emergency, the secondary fire-protected access can actually come through Theatre 1 and then gets you out onto the street. So from a safety standpoint, there's a lot of benefits that actually comes with these upgrades rather than just providing an additional set of theatres. And then just simply as a support space, what we're actually doing is providing a central stair, and that's actually coming from the back of Theatres 2 and 3, as you can see here. You're able to walk into this little corridor, and then we've got basically a new steel stair that will pop up and get from the backs of 2 and 3 up to the existing roof access. So that's one benefit of the existing building, is we're still maintaining the existing maintenance access for the building itself, but we're improving the way that you get there. If anyone's actually been up in these spaces, there's a tiny little switchback stair that happens in this little corner here. I know you can't see my mouse moving. So it's really unsafe currently getting to the roof. And this is one move of how we're improving that access, which is better safety for the city staff who need to maintain the building, but then also for the theatre staff who need to constantly get up to these spaces for storage reasons. And then really what's coming out of this is the fact that there's going to be a brand new projection boost and sound equipment room for Theatre 1, which is a benefit of that side stair. And then any of the auxiliary space that we find up in the truss cavity, we're able to use as secondary storage, which is a benefit to them as well. And so really some of that how these upper spaces are going to get defined is reliant on the condition that the attic space is currently left in. So we've had the opportunity to walk the site with Sam with the current reno, so it's kind of nice to see everything stripped away and some of the moves that they're making. So right now we're working together to better understand what our intentions are, what their intentions are, to just better utilize some of the existing structure of the building so that they benefit and don't have an excessive amount of scaffolding to dance around. And then we can provide, as simple move as possible to try to, make these renos as seamless and as simple for the theatre staff. So when we actually talk about scheduling, it is, truth that we're waiting to get into the building for once the roof upgrades are completed. Just from a safety standpoint, having 2 general contractors on site presents a lot of issues. Exiting becomes a big concern. Each GC has to maintain 2 points of entry, so that gets really unsafe when you're trying to, there's only so many ways in and out of the building, so that becomes a bit of a challenge. And then what that really does is it extends the construction schedule a fair bit. We kind of assume that we're looking at, an 8-month actual construction window, but when we think about, construction start times, we've got summer holidays, we've got Christmas films, things like that. So if there are scheduled openings for the Civic Theatre that would benefit their programming or any other festivals that they've got on schedule over the years, it kind of is dependent on when we get in the building, how much renovation we can actually do before we get in, and then trying to stick to those windows and keeping the moves as simple as possible. So what that really means is phased construction. And that's something that between us and our general contractor or our construction manager, we haven't quite sorted out what the phasing looks like. So that's why we're kind of anticipating that it's likely a year once we get in the building until all the renovations are complete and it's crispy clean and everyone can come back in and enjoy the films. Oh, and that's you.
And that's me.
That's you. Thank you.
I'm hoping you all have this in front of your, okay, great, so it's not really, really tiny. So just segueing from, the complexity of the development schedule, I wanted to quickly look at how we've arrived at the current moment that we're in from the perspective of the cinema industry. This is just a brief timeline showing some key points in the last few years. NCTS actually fared pretty well during the pandemic. We closed our 2021 and 2022 years in the black. However, after the glut of films that were held during the pandemic, that were held up during the pandemic, were released, there was a dearth of films as the studios started to produce films again, and they just hadn't put them out yet. There were a few high points here. Most notably, you'll all remember Barbie, because it was down the street for weeks and weeks on end. It was an extraordinary experience for us and actually for every theater. But it was also the very last major release before the actors' strike really set in, which led to virtually no new releases until it ended in the fall. This also meant that there was no work being developed, and there was a content famine that just continued throughout that time. We did have some good box office grosses this year, and our first quarter of 2024 actually saw a surplus. And then, of course, we've been closed since April, with a current expected reopening in November, and this will mean that the theater is closed for a total of 9 months if we make that deadline. What this history shows is that the impediments to our solvency have been about the industry, but they're not expected to continue to be about the industry going forward, even in a volatile marketplace. Our 3-screen model will work to secure NCTS for the foreseeable future, and you can see this in the multiple scenarios that we've substantiated in the operational model review, which was attached to this presentation. It's worth noting also that multi-screen venues across Canada have not had the same financial issues as single screens, and they all continue to run profitable operations. What's currently affecting our solvency is not the industry. It's the closure of our facility and the loss of most of our income. And as the operational model review shows, the Civic Theatre can anticipate a solid financial future once we complete our multi-screen venue. So, I thought it was probably a great idea to take a moment to celebrate some wins. This was a lot of fun to just put this slide together. It's great to see this information all in one place. So even with the closure of the Civic in April, our stats for 2023-24 are really worth talking about. We raised an enormous amount of money for a theater in Nelson, as you can see, and also a really large number of people gave to our campaigns this year. We've also had a really strong box office this year, which is on par with our grosses from 2015 to 19, pre-pandemic, with more than 800 screenings, many of which were free and have been related to social interests like Black History Month, Indigenous stories, and family-centric things like our Home for the Holidays, which we do every year. There's a much more nuanced conversation about our box office income and concession ratio, which we don't really, I think, have time to delve into today. But in short, our box office numbers are the same because we've not raised prices, basically over the last 10 years. So we wanted to make sure we were always accessible and affordable. We've raised our concession prices to reflect inflated costs and to preserve our margins there as much as possible. Our prices are still well below urban ones such as Cineplex in Vancouver, which Devin recently paid $22 for a ticket for. Right, $22 to see a movie, just to be clear. And that's not because he went to the wrong place. They're all that. So, our membership is strong. If you include areas E and F, as well as the city, more than 7% of the residents in our area are members of NCTS. And we can add about 40 people to this since the end of the year because people have been signing up at markets, which has been really great. But really, it's the words of our members and our patrons that show the value of the Civic and NCTS. So just looking at some of these really quickly, I loved this one. The passion of the theater community in Nelson has kept an essential entertainment source open for everyone in the area. It's difficult to measure the full impact of the absence of a local theater. In this particular case, I love being able to be involved in the community by simply volunteering at the theater, and then later, I'm grateful we have a movie theater with heart. And here, I'm perpetually in awe of the amount of energy that you've been putting in to keep the theater going, dealing with one hurdle after another over the past few years. And then finally, without our theater, Nelson would never be the same again. It's such an important part of our city. These are the things that really fuel us. I have hundreds of these from recent surveys. So I want to get into the current moment. And just noting that despite the fact we have incredible love shown to us from the community, we are in a very difficult time right now. With the theater closed, we've done everything we can to ensure our continuity, ranging from building new things like the drive-in to minimizing expenses, including letting more than 75% of our staff go. This current closure is much longer than we've ever been prepared for, and our small team and our board are doing everything they can to keep things going. We're grateful to the city for making some of our line of credit available to us for operations, but while it's alleviated current cash flow stresses, the fact that we don't have reserves still makes us uncomfortable with borrowing for operations. We're also at the mercy of other things. Not to go into too much detail, but we're working with Consumer Protection BC to make our drive-in compliant with their sightline policies. Something I never thought I'd ever have to think about, but we are now. Currently, we're only licensed for G and PG films, which greatly limits our ability to screen upcoming summer blockbusters, which we're banking on for our financial future. We also have been subject to very rainy weather until the last few weeks, and we need to make up for that low attendance in May. And our decreased capacity is affecting our ability to produce programming. As an example, we delayed the Studis Indigenous Film Festival until this fall as a result of the really complex spring planning we had to do. And of course, we've considered our options. We really have two things we could do here. We could shut everything down, let all of our staff go, but that would really be terrible for community confidence and trust. We can't afford to lose momentum, and how could we possibly turn to the community to fundraise for the capital project if we did that? These are things we're thinking about and weighing right now. Remember, our local community has contributed more than $100,000 in cash and in kind to NCTS in the last 9 months alone. That's a huge outpouring of support, and we want to do right by it. That said, our financial predicament is dire, and it will not change significantly until we're back in the Civic Theatre. The other option is to continue to program and present and develop new avenues to remain visible and relevant. We made this exact decision during the pandemic, and it was the right one. This time, there are no relief programs. There are no wage subsidies. I've spent a lot of time in the last month talking with other executive directors, with contacts at provincial and federal levels, and they're all very empathetic towards our situation. After all, we've all seen organizations go through major restructures like the Vancouver Folk Festival, Hot Docs, Artscape in Calgary, and the federal support that the Toronto International Film Festival has needed this year in the federal budget. We're working really hard not to become a statistic, but our current state is very uncertain, and we need help. The difference with NCTS, though, is really important. Our future venue will be a source of solvency and economic development for our community and region. And after 12 years of operation as a single screen, we are so close to this reality that has been our plan since the very beginning. We just need some help to get there now, and we'll be able to pay it forward in enormous ways for many years to come. So my requests today. I have 3 requests. The first is access to the full line of credit approved in 2019 for NCTS's $4.2 million renovation, which of course has been outlined better by Adam today. And in terms of this request, I wanted to just note, it's never been our intention to carry debt at the end of this project. Those of you who were here when we made that initial request know how many cash flows we did to try to show the various potentials. We asked for the line of credit so that we could apply to the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, and we needed to show at the time that we could carry borrowing costs. Since that time, we've also increased our funds raised for the project to $3.5 million, leaving a current fundraising gap of approximately $700,000. Which of course leads to the second item, which I actually want to just amend here to be a letter of support from the city for our application for the REDIP program. I've learned in talking to a REDIP officer that actually we aren't in competition with other entities in our region, and in fact, there aren't regional allocations for that program. It's just the best projects are the ones that get funded. So if we could please also just ask for a letter of support from the city, we'd be grateful. And it would count a lot. And then finally, I want to take a moment just to talk about this last item. And I make this request with some trepidation, but we're kind of at a point where I just need to ask. I'd like to respectfully request that the city consider using the interest accrued on the $4.1 million given to the municipality last year through the Growing Communities Fund to give NCTS a one-time contribution, a grant of $150,000. This would close our operating grant this year entirely and enable us to focus on our time on fundraising and communications for the capital project rather than trying to keep our head above water. As for the interest on the Growing Communities Fund, looking at their guidelines, they stipulate that it needs to be spent on things that are eligible under the program itself, but that also includes, and I quote, non-capital administrative costs where these are necessary, for example, adding staff capacity related to development. So I figure supporting our organization during an operational closure due to a major renovation can likely be considered an acceptable use of funds. In fact, our shorter renovation closure was always going to need to be included in the project, albeit we were going to be very scrutinizing about what 4 to 6 months, given the high and low times in our year, so as to pick the window with the least income. That's a little different now, and of course it's longer. And as a city-owned cultural facility, we don't receive operating grants like our sister cultural organizations of the Capitol or the museum, and we expect to be able to make these things work on our own after renovations, which is an extremely unusual thing for a cultural charity. In fall 2023, we went through our 2018 business plan assumptions and developed the much briefer updated NCTS operational model review, and with thanks also to Kevin and Chris who asked us for that. This was included in the package for the meeting. There's really good information in there about why the 3-screen model continues to be the best path forward and a solvent one for the future. I just wanted to end by quoting somebody who I've really come to enjoy reading. His name is Jeffrey Kirshner. He has a site called Small Town Big Arts, and I will shamelessly forward blog posts to all of you from now on from his site because it's so good. He wrote, "Communities get the theaters they deserve." And I've been thinking so much about that particular quote. People in our area have shown and voiced that the Civic Theatre is a theatre worth supporting. And we hope that today Council will feel the same way and help us in these 3 ways at this moment when we genuinely need it most. So thank you so much, and I look forward to talking with you all more about this.
Thank you.
So, thank you for your presentation, Eleanor. And anybody have any questions for Eleanor or for Adam? Councillor Lockmer.
For Adam and Eleanor too, I guess. You said black box theater for one of the smaller ones. Can you expand on that? My understanding of black box theater, the chairs could be moved around. You can turn it into
Sure,
a performance space.
Just more that it's smaller. I use that a little loosely. They will be fixed seats, and it'll be the same slope as we've seen in the balcony right now.
Okay.
So it's just an 80-person theater, just a little more intimate.
Okay.
Councillor Page.
You gave us a lot of information there, and I'm just finding myself a little unclear as to the anticipated reopening.
So are we. A little unclear about the anticipated reopening. It's tricky, because timelines right now all have to dovetail with the city timelines. So the good news is we're in lockstep with city staff. We have Sam Ellison coming to our meetings every 2 weeks. I find that, Kevin and Chris have been endlessly available for all sorts of questions from us. And so ultimately, it's going to kind of be what it's going to be. And I think the thing that we all need to do is be patient and be empathetic towards the different things that need to happen. And it's probably going to just take longer than anybody wants it to. Is that accurate?
That's fair to say. I mean, every construction project that we typically work on is longer and more expensive. I've never really seen anything beat that in my 15-year career working in the field. And yeah, really, we're just waiting for the roof upgrades to be completed. But the one thing that we did discuss as a team is when I talked about the idea of having multiple GCs on site, it becomes a complicated mess, and it's just generally safer for everyone involved to just let the roof renovations happen. And then when they're demobilized, we can come in, and whether it's coming in to reno or coming in to operate, that's the move that is the smartest and safest option that we could conceive as a team.
Do you have a follow-up before I go to Councillor Woodward?
Okay, so we're on the long end, we're looking at April 2025. Is that where the 9 to 12 months comes from, or does the 9 to 12 months start from when the roof is done?
The 10 to 12 would start when the roof is done.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did have a supplemental.
Okay.
It might be for staff. On that question of interest on the 4.2 million, what is the interest we've earned on the 4.2 million?
Roughly in 2023, we allocated 125,000 back to that.
Thank you.
Councillor Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. So what we're doing at the theater is, it's a huge job, and it's an old building, and my concern is we'll run into things that we weren't expecting, and the closure will last longer than you think. And I'm wondering about, obviously you have a plan A here. What about plans B, C, and D in case, who knows, but how long can you survive if fall doesn't roll around and it looks like it could be the winter or something like that? How resilient are you?
We're not resilient financially. However, what I would say is this isn't plan A. This is already plan T.
Okay.
Right? We've been doing this since
Yes.
2020, and it was interesting when the roof issues came around. We started planning and thinking. You all saw the Rising Strong campaign that we did. I'll note, we had some really big gifts. We had an anonymous $25,000 gift as part of this, so people really got behind it. I would say that, we're going to have to continue to iterate. There's no way that we can't do that. So one of the things that I've been doing is looking in new places. I've been working hard to open up advocacy routes with provincial and federal government people. I've also been speaking to the equity piece for people in small communities who don't have the opportunity to rub shoulders with people who make decisions in major government entities at opening nights or in the park when they're walking their dog. We don't have that opportunity here in the same way. Our iterations are going to have to continue to vary. I have to thank my board because I think they've had to really struggle with the reality of our situation, knowing how hard it is, and so I think basically we'll keep doing the good fight until nobody wants to do it anymore, and then hopefully if that happens we'll pass the baton to somebody who does. But it's not a small undertaking, but it's so much to lose. So unfortunately, I guess, it's sort of like any long-term project, you keep going until it's finished.
May I have a supplemental, Mayor? Thank you. Could you, if it looked like we ran into some major issue and it looked like it was going to be longer, could you, at that point, put the theater on hiatus, kind of freeze it as it is, and keep your expenses to a minimum, and then make it through until the job is done?
So one of the brilliant things about the way the cover is developing this project is that it has stages. So it won't be that we close and hope to get it done and, pencils down for a little while and we don't get anything done for a bit. We'll reopen the theater, show films. We know how to run a single screen theater. So if we have one screen, we'll work with it. If we have two, we'll work with that. And when we get to three. The other thing is when you have an elongated timeline, it sounds horrible, but actually you have more opportunities because in the next 2 years, there will be funding programs that come out that we don't know about yet. And one of the, one important piece of feedback that I got in talking to the REDIP officer was they really like to finish projects, which I figure probably works really well for us. So if we're always in the process of finishing, that's going to get old, isn't it? If we're always in the process of finishing the project, just because something new showed up, it will be okay. There will be new opportunities, I think. Maybe that's my optimism, but I guess that's why I'm doing this.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Councillor Tate.
Thanks for the presentation. Can you just quickly do the numbers with me again? Because I get a little muddled. So the 4.2 is for the whole big project, 4.2 million.
Yeah.
And then I heard you say a $700,000 gap. Is that to get to the 4.2 from the grants and everything?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then the request number 3, the 150 is like an operating grant separate from that to get you
It is.
maybe until the construction starts or through the construction?
That'll get us to the end of this year.
Okay.
So, yeah.
You mentioned also, supplemental through the chair, thank you. You mentioned also that you've got membership from Area E and F. How goes the door knocking at the RDCK?
Actually, I presented to the RDCK Rec Commission for the first time, it was funny, I had a conversation with Joe Chirico, and he said, "You have never come." And I said, "Well, I guess it's about time." So I really enjoyed that. I think that that's a conversation that we're going to continue to develop. One of the things that I made, a point that I made when I went to that was, we're not a user group. You know, we are a key stakeholder. You know, we're an anchor tenant, and we'd like to be part of the conversation with the RDCK. I'm also getting to know what the RDCK's policies are surrounding funding. So, like, it's very specific, as you all know, what they will give to and what they won't. So we're talking about ways that we might be able to look into support from them. But I think it's going to be a long tail. There's also, like, we are such a small crew now. You know, there's only 4 of us working on almost everything right now, with a couple of small contracts. So, you know, even the projections that we've had to do over the last number of months take a huge amount of my time and the fundraising. So being able to get into some of these deeper relationship development pieces, it's just a capacity issue right now. But it's not that it's not on the radar. We know that needs to be part of our conversation as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, actually, can I add one more thing? RDCK also contributed the rental of their popcorn machine for the entire time that we are at the drive-in, to the value of $4,000 in rental time that we were going to be paying and that they waived. So actually, that is something I should mention that.
Councillor Lochinver.
This is maybe more a question for staff about the Reddit request about non-competition for that grant. So can you talk more about that? What the implications of that might be for the city?
I think Eleanor clarified that's not what they're asking for, that it's not a competition-based regional grant. It's more the best projects get funded regardless of where they are. So I'm correct there that you're not
Yeah,
asking
that's
for
what they told me.
non-competition. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sorry I missed that when you must have said it. So the slide is no longer operative.
At the time when I sent
Got
the
it.
slides, I hadn't had the chance to talk to that officer yet, and we finally touched base afterwards. So that's the reason why what I really would love is a letter of support from the city, which would go a long way to
Okay,
support our
so-
application. Yeah,
Got it. Okay.
yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Any further questions?
Madam Mayor, just a couple, maybe just some key timelines. So obviously you're in, I'm not sure where you're in the design. Would you still say you're schematic?
I would, yes.
Okay, so schematic to, when do you see finishing schematic?
Sorry, say that again?
When do you see finishing schematic and going into construction
Well,
drawings?
I mean, what you saw on the, excuse me, what you saw on the screen could be considered completion of schematics.
Okay.
So really our focus would be making sure that we've got a BP set of drawings ready so that when we get a better sense of when the roof job is going to be complete, we're either ready to go or we're ready to go. So we just want to make sure that we are not falling behind the city's, schedule. So from a construction standpoint, there's a reason why we have a construction manager and a separate PM on board, because that's going to help us curate how to discuss our phasing, how to discuss what's critical for construction, and then as we start to look at let's say just project cost, what do we have left for finishing? And so that's where phasing comes into play, because if we're talking about constructing Theater 1, the stair and the projection booth, because they really need to work in tandem, then the back of those 2 buildings can be closed. So that could be, in theory, phase 1. So, from a BP standpoint, it's easy to put together the full set of drawings, but the actual construction phasing and demo phasing is a little different. When you look at the back of Theater 2, the reason why I pointed out the bathrooms first is because, plumbing upgrades are expensive, especially when we're cutting into concrete. So if we think about the lobby and the back of Theater 2 and 3 happening at the same time, that starts to get a little more economic and just isolating the areas that we'd have to hoard off. So we can move quickly on a BP level set of drawings, and we have a CM on the project because it helps us refine our M&E design and any structural implications that we have. I mean, ideally, we're not doing anything significantly structural on this. There may be some tall walls that need to get tied up to the truss system, but really we're not penetrating through the slab or any of the existing concrete like the previous iterations were, because it was a much larger endeavor. So it's not going to take us much to get to BP level, but the actual minutia of the design, the curation of the kitchen, the bathrooms and things like that, as long as we have a sense of where they are, easy to submit. The materiality and the refinement, it comes after in a sense, and it gives us a little flexibility to work with the staff of the society to come up with, a beautiful interior scheme rather than just a functional plan with stairs, fire safety, things like that. Like that's the bare bones of what we want to hammer out first. So.
Okay, so are you looking at this fall? Is that sort of the
Well,
timeline?
ideally, yes.
Yeah.
Ideally, yes, we would have a BP ready when the city's
Okay.
demobilizing.
Okay.
That's the plan, and then there's a lot in between there. So that's why it depends on when they're done to whether it's critical for us to match their timeline or not.
Okay.
But that's the expectation, is that we're BP ready and shovel, or not shovel ready, but hammer ready in the late fall.
Okay. And Eleanor, in terms of, there is additional fundraising that has to happen?
So as it is currently, there are a couple of prospects we are going to, I don't want to talk about who they are because, they're out there, they're prospects. We've got a couple of prospects that we're looking at for other larger grants. But knowing that the REDIP application can be for up to $1 million, we would like to see if we can close the gap with that grant. But as I said, there are a couple of other intakes in different things that we would like to get into. Some of you may remember, we did launch sort of a public campaign, looking for porch parties and things like that. But I've been a little bit reticent to get into that in any deep way. I feel like reading our community, the cost of increase to everything, the increased cost to everything. I just don't feel like doing a $700,000 local fundraising campaign is a great idea right now, and I'd like to find ways to bring more money into our community rather than ask our community for more money at this time. But there may be a fundraising piece at the end. And the other thing, of course, we haven't really talked about is the fact that $4.2 million, Adam and his team are doing the very best they can to make that money work so that we can build the theater that we intended. But there may actually need to be some scope fundraising later. We haven't planned for any of that. That's not going to happen yet. So there may be other iterations of fundraising later on. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Payne and then Councillor Woodward.
I'm just trying to figure out in my mind BP drawings for
Building,
someone who is-
building permit.
That's what I thought, but I had a few guesses there, so I wanted to clarify.
What's your your abbreviation
I
sign?
know, it's
great.
buried in my desk. I was writing as fast as I could to catch things.
Councillor Woodward.
I was wondering about where construction costs are these days, because they were spiking pretty heavily for a long time. Are they still?
They are still very high.
They're still very high.
We've seen lumber drop, but that's just one facet of it, because what we've also seen with that is cost of living. So labor costs are still high. They've not dropped.
So my specific question here is in manufactured products that you're going to have to install, like seats. What are the costs on that kind of stuff?
So the $4.2 million, just to clarify, is a project cost. We have construction costs, we have soft costs. So construction includes anything that's basically attached to the building.
Okay.
And a
So
soft
not-
cost is furniture. A soft costs are our fees, they're permit fees. And so really, we're probably looking at closer to $2.9 million of construction costs when we get down to it, because we have to factor in allowances. We have all of our project management fees, construction management fees, design fees, permits, furniture. So we're largely looking at probably, I'd say, $350 for soft, like FF&E. But just in general, every project we're working on right now is coming in alarmingly high, because just the way that, lumber, for instance, works, if you buy a yard of lumber at $900, you still have to sell it for $900. So if lumber drops, you've purchased that at $900 and you have to wait for lumber to come back up so that you can sell it at that, because otherwise you're taking a loss. So just in general, the construction industry has a huge stockpile right now of expensive raw material, because they've purchased it at high points and it just sits in the yard until pricing comes back up. So unfortunately, we've seen the I'll say the bottleneck of material slowdown finally correct itself, but in general, the costs are still very high. Conventional construction is still probably floating around $400 a square foot.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no other hands going up, I'm gonna thank you, Eleanor and Adam, for bringing us up to date on the project. I'm sure we'll be having you back at future opportunities to continue I'm sort of thinking maybe in the fall. Well, I guess it depends on how our roof goes. Updates, we could have people coming in every week to give us updates on projects, but, yeah, look forward to having you, back again, and thank you to the board members that are sitting in the back that have come to, support your executive director and, cover, so, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all again.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is 6B, and it's the Urban Forest Management Report. And our planning intern, and I don't want to get your name wrong,
Mika.
Mickey?
Mika.
Mika. Hi, Mika. We'll be offering the council an innovative perspective on integrating natural-based solutions in urban forest management. And I see other teams from our planning department are here, but I see they're gonna stay in the back row.
Because she can handle it.
Yeah, that's great.
That's confidence.
Yeah, you gotta put the microphone near your mouth.
Yep.
Great.
Is that?
Yeah, you gotta, I think it's quite close.
Yeah.
Be quite close, yeah.
Quite close.
A bit more.
Okay.
There
That's
you
great.
go.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thanks for having me here today. I'm looking forward to talking to you about urban forest management as a nature-based solution for the city of Nelson. So just a brief introduction on myself for those of you who I haven't met. I'm currently a Master of Resource and Environmental Management Planning at Simon Fraser University in Burnaby, where I'm working on a larger nature-based solutions research project. I'm currently in between year 1 and 2 of my master's, and I'm lucky to get to spend that time in Nelson, interning with the city in the Development Services Department to draft an urban forest strategy report for the city. And this internship is funded by the Pacific Institute for Climate Solutions. So that's been very generous of them. My presentation follows, or is going to follow this structure. So I'm just going to start with an explanation of what nature-based solutions are, just to get us all kind of on the same page. And then I will go into a bit of a background explanation of the nature-based solutions research project. That is a joint project between Simon Fraser University and Selkirk College. Thirdly, I will be going into what makes urban forest management a nature-based solution. And then the fourth section of this presentation will be looking at urban forest strategies, which are the planning documents that currently guide urban forest management. And I'll be finishing off with an overview of the work that I've been doing during this internship so far. So nature-based solutions, broadly, they're ecosystem-based approaches to solve interconnected problems, everything from biodiversity loss to climate change. And at the same time, we're always looking to create human well-being benefits as well, whether through social, economic, or environmental means. And obviously, that sounds like a very broad definition, and that's because it is. So there are a lot of different approaches and projects that fall under the umbrella or under, the category of nature-based solutions. So something that helps me sort of grasp what they are is thinking about them in terms of like a spatial scale. So you can zoom all the way out to large-scale initiatives, which could be something like a watershed level restoration project, which would affect an entire region. But then you can also get very small scale, where you're looking at individual properties and landscaping or surface permeability choices that can be made there to deal with urban heat island effect or stormwater management. And something that I personally find really exciting about nature-based solutions is that they kind of reframe our relationship to nature, especially in very urbanized settings. So historically, when we think about sort of engineered infrastructure and hard gray infrastructure in communities, it's often very counter to nature, and it's usually like two very separate systems. But with nature-based solutions, you're looking at ways to integrate those two in a way that leads to more resilient and sustainable systems. So in short, you can think of nature-based solutions as ways of working and living with nature. So a bit of a background on the Nature-Based Solutions Research Project. I have Dr. Sarah Breen from Selkirk College here in the audience today, and she is a researcher on this project. So currently, the nature-based solutions research that is underway is usually conducted in very urbanized settings, so it's not the most relevant to smaller and more remote communities. And sort of one of the rationales behind wanting to embark on this project is that smaller and more remote communities do face what could be considered disproportionate burdens of challenges that all communities are facing, but specifically in smaller communities, you have to deal with infrastructure deterioration, and there isn't always enough resources to counteract that. And then, as with any community, there are also capacity strains, whether those be financial or in terms of staff. And climate change, when you throw that into the mix, is just going to increase and add to those challenges. So Simon Fraser University and Selkirk College joined up to apply for a research grant to conduct this 5-year joint research project. And there are 4 case communities that are partnered on the project. These are Prince Rupert, Summerland, Squamish Nation, and then, of course, Nelson. And each community identified the nature-based solution that it's the most interested in learning about and also pursuing potentially in the future as a natural asset or infrastructure solution to add to its inventory of infrastructure. And with Nelson, it emerged that urban forest management is sort of the nature-based solution that there is the most interest for at the moment. So what this project is trying to do is investigate barriers and opportunities for nature-based solutions implementation in smaller and more remote communities to then inform potential policy decisions at the provincial and potentially also the federal level. So, actually I need some water. So, when we're thinking about urban forest management as a nature-based solution, it helps to understand that the urban forest is more than just street trees. So urban forests comprise everything from boulevard trees to backyard trees to green spaces, and sort of preserved ecosystems within the urban boundary or urban containment boundary. And when we take all of that into consideration, like humans, we also fit into that larger ecosystem of connected green spaces within a city. And even at the level of a single tree, you can see the influence that it has on its surrounding environment. So everything from air purification through the uptake and metabolization of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases and small particulate matter, and then subsequently, that carbon is also sequestered and stored in the ground and in the tissue of the trees as they grow. You also get rainfall interception, which not only slows down the speed of rain when it comes down, but also dissipates it and disperses it into smaller droplets, which lowers the erosive capacity of rain, helping to keep certain infrastructure intact. And you also have increased stormwater management abilities just as a result of having more permeable space throughout a city. And you're also generating more habitat for wildlife just through the creation of these vegetated spaces. And then from a very human perspective, humans like to recreate and just spend time in nature, which is beneficial to human physical and mental well-being. And then specifically, probably the biggest impact that urban forests are going to have on the communities in which they exist is their ability to regulate temperatures in the urban environment and also protect from incoming solar radiation. And these next two slides make that pretty clear. They are a great visual representation of what that really looks like on a temperature level. So these are images of Burnaby, the city of Burnaby. And on the left, the darker the red, the greater the amount of paved surface in that area. And on the right, the warmer the color, the higher the surface temperature of that part of the map. And so you can see that where there's more paved surface, you're experiencing much higher temperatures. And these heat images were taken during the 2021 heat dome event. So yeah, just showing like the hottest of hot temperatures. And paved surfaces are used as a proxy for non-vegetated surfaces. So you can assume that the less paved surfaces will likely have some form of urban vegetation on them. And then these photos are from the city of Sydney in Australia, and they just show you how when a road is completely exposed, or when gray infrastructure is completely exposed to incoming radiation, it heats up to insanely high temperatures, like around 50 to 60 degrees Celsius. Obviously, Sydney is a little bit of a hotter climate than Nelson, but Nelson does get pretty hot as well. And yeah, so this just shows the regulating effects that an urban canopy can have and the benefit of that. And yeah, having that shade covering the road can also increase the lifespan of engineered infrastructure like that, because it's just being deteriorated less over time. And we know from the Nelson Next engagement that human health is like the main climate action co-benefit that that Nelsonites are concerned about or would like to gain from climate action initiatives. And urban forest management can definitely contribute to improving human health through temperature regulation and air quality improvements. But you will also be getting or also checking off ecosystem protection, as well as ensuring a quality of life for future generations, just due to the duration of lifespans of urban trees. Community vibrancy and well-being will also be supported just through urban vegetation, throwing in some softer tones to what would normally be a very monotonous urban landscape, cost savings in the form of building energy use reduction through shade being thrown on the building throughout the day, economic development, very aesthetically pleasing spaces with urban vegetation tend to draw in tourists, and new residents, but also could lead to the retention of existing residents and subsequently draw in more business activity as well. And then comfort and convenience, that links back to human health and the temperature regulating impacts of the urban canopy. So moving on to, or moving beyond the benefits of urban forest management, the question becomes, how do we manage our urban forests and how is that currently being done, specifically in Canada and in BC? Urban forest strategies are documents that are seeing rising popularity, and they serve as roadmaps for proactive urban forest management, proactive and collaborative urban forest management. And you can see that rise in popularity in the fact that already around 35 municipalities in BC do have some form of comprehensive urban forest management document. And these documents are helpful because they, urban forest management can be a pretty contentious subject because it is a community asset, and there are many different stakeholders involved in its management. So everyone from city staff to private developers to residents and utility companies as well, all have a stake in the management of the urban forest. And so what these documents do is that they provide an overview of the current state and trends of an urban forest in a given municipality, which can include a canopy cover analysis, which kind of shows you the percentage cover that your municipality currently has, whether for the municipality as a whole or by neighborhood, if you wanted to investigate that, as well as trends in canopy cover over time, whether it's going down or up or staying the same. History and ecology is incredibly important for having that place-based approach to urban forest management. They also provide a review of local regulations, plans, and policies to better understand sort of the jurisdictional capacity around urban forest management. And then community feedback, usually surveys or workshops or focus groups, are carried out to better understand how the community feels around urban forest management, because it's important to understand the demographics around that as well. And then they end by providing management goals and supporting actions to help support the completion of those goals over time. And specifically, of growing interest in urban forest management nowadays is the concept of tree equity or urban forest or canopy equity, because historically green spaces have not been equitably distributed across communities, and that's different on a community to community basis, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. And so with everything that I have learned about urban forest management, that is how I've tailored the work and the activities that I've been doing throughout this internship. So they're definitely informed by the structure of existing urban forest strategies in BC. So some of the things that I've done are a preliminary iTree land cover analysis, which is the image with the colorful dots on it, which just kind of provides, a very simple analysis of the different land cover types and how they're distributed throughout a city. I've also been going around downtown, taking stock of the trees that exist on the boulevards. And that data set could serve as the foundation for a potential future online interactive tool for the public in the city, or it could just remain an internal resource. I'm also conducting a review of regulations, plans, and policies that are currently in place in Nelson that pertain to the management of the urban forest. Educational visuals such as simple maps that sort of outline different jurisdictions and different areas of the city where different bylaws might apply, like the wildfire resilience bylaw. I sent out a community engagement survey yesterday, so I'm looking to get feedback through that as well on community perspectives surrounding urban forest management over the next 3 weeks. And the last item that I'd like to do before leaving in 4 weeks is to host a staff lunch and learn to go over some of the results that I've come across by doing all of these different activities, and then all of that will be summed up and written up in an urban forest strategy report, which I'll be handing over by the end of this internship. So that's all, and thank you for your time. And any questions?
Oh, yeah, there'll be questions.
Yeah?
Councillor Page, then Councillor Woodward.
Okay. Sorry.
Thank you so much for coming on board over the summer here and
Yep.
giving us some foundation for this work. It's really important, and we've talked about it a few times as we move towards an urban strategy. Looking at the list of activities and drawing in the documents you're looking at, the active transportation plan speaks to our primary pedestrian routes. And
Yeah.
when you think about Vernon to Morgan to Douglas to Fifth, I'm wondering when you're looking at the downtown tree inventory, if it needs to be expanded to the primary pedestrian routes throughout the city that we've envisioned, because when you kind of go down Vernon, you've got great, huge heritage trees at the end there as they wrap around gyro. It's very well shaded. It's very well established, and as you kind of get up onto Morgan and Douglas, that kind of treescape disappears, turns into a very hot place all the way down to Fifth to Lakeside until you loop around, and it just seems like there might be a gap there in the inventory side of things if we're trying to induce people to walk around the city. So is that something that could be incorporated into the list of activities, or is it something that then once we have a framework from the downtown part, we would go and do ourselves?
No, I think that's a very good point. I think with downtown, I was just trying to keep it to, because it's my first tree inventory as well, so I was trying to like stick within a certain geographic location, but no, it's so true that active transportation seeks to benefit so much from increased canopy cover. So if I can get around to it, I can definitely try to take inventory of the trees along the pedestrian network. But yeah, if I can't, then that will definitely fall into the recommendations that I include in the urban forest strategy report.
Okay, and then supplemental?
Sure.
So in the inventory that you're doing, I know Edmonton GISs assigns a value, records the species of all the trees they have. I think Calgary probably does something similar.
Yeah.
Are we capturing this in a GIS data set of some sort? We know
Yeah.
locations, we'll be able to attach metadata information, and potentially in your recommendations, figure out how we're assigning a value to the loss of those trees, or the lack of protection for the trees, or lack of replacement for those trees.
Yes, to the GIS. I have access to Nelson Hydro's Fulcrum app, which allows you to georeference points on a map. So I've been doing that for each individual tree, and I take note of the species, the diameter at chest height, which is usually an indicator of the age of a tree. I'm not a qualified arborist, so I haven't been taking note of the health of a tree, although with certain trees you can tell whether they're doing not so well. I have been noting down when they've been heavily pruned by because of a utility line, or just if there is a utility line overhead, just because that is important to know just for future plantings potentially. And then what was the second part of your question? It was
mostly about just the expertise.
Yeah,
the
and a monetary value.
The monetary value.
Yeah, that is, that's an emerging concept as well. The iTree land cover analysis actually provides an estimate of the value of an urban canopy, based on those dots that I put on the map. It did come up with a value of the services that the urban canopy provides to Nelson, but it can't go down to the individual tree level, but you could average it across the canopy if you did want to sort of zoom in on one individual tree that might have to be removed during a development project.
Okay. And
Yeah.
one final, if it's okay.
Sure.
In
Then
your
you're cut off.
Yeah, no, and I think I'll have most of my stuff captured. You'll hear about it throughout the year. Years anyway. In your supplementary information that you provided, you took a snapshot from our climate futures plan. It talks about the increase in our mean temperatures and in the high and low carbon scenarios.
Yeah.
I'm noting within those low carbon and high carbon scenarios, from the baseline of today, we're basically looking at either way double the hot days, double the extreme hot days as well on both sides. So, given that those are 20 and 50 years out for that timeline horizon of 2041 and 2071, is there a sense within this, in the recommendations of what kind of actions we really need to be taking now to prepare for these incredibly hot exposure summers we'll be having, when these trees that we would put in the ground today would finally be at a place where they're really starting to provide those shade and other benefits?
Yeah, there's like
more of the future casting,
the
urban forest component, because we're moving into a changed environment.
Yeah, and there's definitely going to be a focus on species selection and making sure that they are climate resilient. I think actually, yes, the Columbia Basin Trust, they came out with a report in 2020 or 2021 about adapting community tree management to climate projections. I don't think that included a list of species per region, because they did, they like showed the climate projections for each municipality, and but there wasn't a recommended list of species included in that. But there is research going on around that, I'm pretty sure. I haven't delved too deeply into it, but making sure that the trees that are planted today or within the next 10 years are able to withstand increasingly hotter growing seasons is definitely going to be important. And I will incorporate that. Yeah.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Councillor Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to talk about, thank you for your presentation. It's wonderful data. Nicely presented, thank you. I'd like to talk about what's underground. So, we have to work on Baker Street, our main thoroughfare here. And one of the problems is the trees' roots have caused a lot of damage to the infrastructure below. So part of this work you're doing, I would imagine, would have to include subsurface impacts of what you're planting and where, and how deep the roots go.
Yeah.
And what kinds of trees have deep roots and which don't, and do we container them? Do we not container them? All that kind of stuff, I think, is so critical when you're doing an urban forest planning, considering the expense of replacing infrastructure below ground. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Again, I'm not an engineer, like a licensed arborist who would definitely know more about when a tree would need to be containered. But from what I've seen in other urban forest strategies, it seems like when it comes to, and were you specifically referring to, like, when there's an opportunity to redo a street, like, what do we choose to do then? Yeah. From what I can tell, the consensus tends to be always include, like, find a way to include trees. But ideally, you would have the silva cells to better deal with the roots. And I've also seen diagrams where you could strategically place the silva cell or the pipes in a way where you increase the space between them to reduce the conflict there. But obviously that would be, a large scale undertaking. with a lot of upfront costs, but at the same time, not finding a way to replant those trees for them to then grow in an environment that would allow them to reach like a certain size to provide the benefits that we do get from them being there, because like I'm not from Nelson, but I have walked down Baker Street a few times now, but like imagining that without trees in the summer, it would be very, very hot. I'm not saying trees can't be replaced through other engineered infrastructure, but when you're looking at it holistically, trees are the best at what they do. So yeah, I don't know if that really answers your question,
Well,
but
it's good. I'm just supplemental.
Sure.
So I guess I'm just thinking of Nelson in my head and of the gradation of infrastructure below ground and the kind of planting, and that actually, if we were doing a full structured urban forest management planning, that it'd be different trees in different areas and different that would provide different aspects, and and in the downtown core where the infrastructure is heavy and very, very expensive, heavy duty, I should say, and very expensive, is that you really got to pick your trees correctly. So I'd only ask that as you do this to think about the where infrastructure is and what would be best practices for planting and what kinds of trees, and really root depth and where the roots go once they're beginning to grow. Thank you.
yeah, thanks. And not choosing fruit-bearing trees.
Well, there is that. That's a whole nother
Yeah.
piece of the discussion. But thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Councillor Tate.
Hi, thanks so much for this. Would you mind going up a couple slides for me to
Yeah.
the one in, I think it was Australia?
Yeah.
Stop. Oh, see, I love this, and you know what I'm going to say about this. So the top one with no trees has wires. Yeah, and the bottom one has no wires that we can see. So I have a curiosity about how does a municipality that has its own electrical distribution and utility go about transitioning away from the sky wires to the not sky wires, short of going to wireless power transmission that's coming in the future? Is that a thing? Is that a thing?
Oh, we don't
Not the wireless.
I
know the
don't
wireless
see
is
Scott in
coming.
the room, but
Is that a thing?
Yeah, actually,
Help me understand.
well, in our new neighborhoods, right, it's all required to be underground, right?
Say it
We
again.
don't,
in new
I said in our
neighborhoods.
new neighborhoods,
Okay.
all of that goes underground. So
Okay.
that's what you do in today's world. To put what's existing underground is extremely expensive. So it's a challenge, right? It's how do you ultimately, how do you find a balance, right? You need to, as Councillor Woodward said, we have underground services, we have overhead services, we are trying to maintain a urban forest. So how do you do that in a way that you have to find balance there of what you can and can't do. There's certain trees that we have planted that interfere with overhead and are not safe with trees growing into them. So the species you plant, all those things, where you plant them, are you planting on the other side of the street? So you're not interfering with your overhead utilities. All those things have to be sort of taken into account. But
So that's interesting, and I didn't know that about the new neighborhoods. I think I might have known that. So what about the other players, like, for example, internet? And so those ones are all overhead as well. So,
again, any new neighborhood, those are all shallow utilities. They put all those in the ground now. So if you're building from scratch and you're digging up the thing to put in water, sewer, you put in your shallow utilities at the same time, and it's cost effective. What's not cost effective is now that you have those overhead utilities and you're not, you're now having to dig up streets and sidewalks and all those things. So as we did in Baker, or when we did the downtown conversion, we put a lot of that infrastructure underground, and it's not just our side of it, it's the building side of it as well, because their service was overhead, so all their infrastructure is to meet an overhead. So we had to figure out how we, connected to the building now that the service was coming from underground versus overhead. So you'll see us running up the sides of buildings and poles still existing to run, back up the side of the building, even though the wires aren't overhead anymore.
It's and I think that GM once described it as spaghetti under the ground. Oh, geez. Okay, thanks so much. I was curious.
Councillor Payne?
There's just one further aspect of this that I don't know if it falls under your project, but I sit on the Heritage Working Group, and there is discussion in that group of individuals that in Nelson in particular, and I'm sure in many other communities, that the tree landscape is part of our heritage and therefore has a value outside of the ecosystem values. So as I say, I don't think it's part of what you're looking at, but it certainly is a component in our community, the value of those trees besides their nature NBIs, nature-based benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that that's on the radar, because I'm sure different communities have that same perspective, and certainly different neighborhoods in some of the larger communities.
Yeah, I can confirm that. Heritage trees are definitely talked about a lot in other urban forest strategies. Some have heritage tree registers or registrars, and some municipalities have tree protection bylaws that have a specific section protecting heritage trees, and sometimes a heritage tree, the characteristics aren't super well defined, so there's like a spectrum that exists on as well, and the more specific your conditions are for meeting heritage tree status, the better you can protect them in a way, because then there's more like legal recognition almost for those certain trees, but also it speaks to the community's history as well, and like just protecting it for that sake. I definitely will include a paragraph or about that.
Awesome. And just one other thing,
Sure.
I actually did attend the CBT webinar back in 2020 when we were all spending more time, or I was at least, watching webinars on Zoom. It was absolutely fascinating. I think it's still available to see. And my recollection is they did mention the migration of certain species that would be more suited to our future climate. So very fascinating what they did with that information. So thank you for that work. That's been foundational to some of the things we're doing.
Okay, seeing no further questions, I'd like to thank you. And we've all voted. We saw your presentation, because we were reviewing the docket beforehand, that she should get an A. Back to the instructor there in the back of the room. So, thank you for your work, and we are going to be looking forward to your final paper and that you're going to leave with us here to set us on the direction for our urban forest management going forward. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you for choosing Nelson to do your summer internship at. We really appreciate it. And, you're always welcome back.
Thank you.
Keep
Thanks
Nelson
for
on your
having me.
radar.
Thank you. See you. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. We've got a bit of time before our usual dinner break, so we'll continue on. City manager report. Have anything exciting?
Other than, the Civic Theater or Civic Roof project is obviously front and center on a bunch of our radars. So working through that, hopefully meet some of those timelines. We're yeah, it's a tight timeline to try to meet before this winter. We're certainly not where we're hoping to be in terms of progress, but we've certainly expedited this project, and it is a complicated building, and we are finding lots of surprises in that building and lots of challenges of how do you deal with that. But yeah, we're confident in the team to get this delivered. So that's been a focus. Certainly been doing some labor relations stuff as well, and we'll share more about that. Yeah, other than that, that's kind of my radar. I went and personally saw heat sinks in Phoenix. If you want to see heat radiated off a parking lot, yeah, it's crazy. So anyway, that's it for me.
Amy, do you have anything you'd like to report from the finance department?
Nothing too major. CFO jury's gone on well-deserved vacation for a few weeks. So we're managing well down there. Property taxes are all past due. So we are helping people with their retro.
Property taxes are all past due. They're all paid. There's a few stragglers, perhaps.
Few stragglers that we're helping claim some retro homeowners grants. If you haven't done that yet, you can still claim that, which is nice. And then you'll just have the 10% penalty. We've got water sewer bills going out due in September, or early mid-September. And parking's getting there. So we're super close. We're excited.
When will you be able to tell us the number of people that are now diverting their property? Like, I forget what the proper term is. Like, not paying that they're going on the government program.
The deferment?
Deferment.
I can bring something back next council.
Yeah, that would be great, because those numbers I know have been creeping up. I just like to get a report on those, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
Next meeting, September, when you know that you'll have them there, because I know people are still potentially paying. Councillor Tate, you have a question?
No, I didn't.
Oh, I saw your hand. Oh, okay. Oh. Okay. So over to General Manager.
Yeah, thanks. I'll just provide a bit of a update on operations out there. Largely, we've now settled into our summertime routine of, we kind of go through the really busy season of getting everything planted. The grass is growing at incredible rates, et cetera, getting things cleaned up. So we've now made it through that portion and are settling into our summer routine, which involves obviously the ongoing maintenance, but also things like our paving program, which you'll note started on 5th and onto Douglas Street there, Douglas Road, and then Morgan up around. I sent an email to you there, but up Gyro Road up to Mill Street, I believe, was what we said was going to get completed this year. So there'll be some disruptions there as well. Normally this time of the year is when we get into a lot of our third-party connections. So this is where we are patching in new services, wastewater services to new builds. We aren't seeing as many this year as normally are sort of anticipated. So that allows us to do some great maintenance work. So we've been talking a lot about preventative maintenance on our water and wastewater systems. So you'll see, if you're fortunate, you'll get to see some crews working on hydrants around town, making sure that those are going to be working, as needed. So just for a little bit of insight there, the third-party connections is, a priority to get people plugged in. Preventative maintenance is also, something that we definitely look at. And when we have gaps like this is how we fill our time, right? So we don't have as many third parties that we can do, and we're allowed, or, that enables us to jump on some of that preventative maintenance and get a little bit ahead in that game for the years where we have more third party connections to do that type of thing. So that's from the operations side. And because everybody's probably curious how the crews are keeping cool. I know that I moved by hand a dump truck load of sand on the weekend, and
how that made me feel and how I considered how these crews are going day in, day out. So they've all adjusted to their earlier shifts now. So by about 2 o'clock, you won't see too many public works vehicles or city vehicles out there working, which is good. They've adjusted to earlier hours. Simple tactics like making sure that there's enough electrolytes and Gatorade drinks around. You know, we're going to look at just getting a stand-up freezer so we can just put all of those, you know, water bottles and Gatorades into the freezer, and they can come in the morning, grab frozen ones, and then that keeps everything cool throughout the day. So they seem to be faring quite well, and good with that. From a planning perspective, we are still short-staffed. You know, all of the sort of omens about, shortage of planning professionals seem to be playing out for us now. So I think, you know, just good context for you all to have when considering the different, you know, things that are coming up, whether it be, funding intake or projects where, you know, planner heavy. We are exploring different ways of doing that with, we already have a planner on contract. We're going to be exploring, other planners to help us sort of meet the need in the meantime while we're going through the hiring processes. So just to keep everybody in the loop on that side. And I think that was about where I was going to land with update on operations, a little bit update on planning there for today.
Councilors, questions. So we'll go Payne, Woodward, Lockenberg.
I just saw an email go out, and I'm just interested in the process for the fire master plan.
For the fire master plan?
The fire master
Yeah.
plan. So there was, How does that work? What's that process?
In terms of hiring a consultant?
Is that what this
Yeah.
means?
Yeah.
That means that we're hiring a consultant. It just says request for proposal.
Yeah, so that's where we go out to the consulting, those folks that write these fire master plans. So that's our request to get proposals from the various consultants to do this work for us.
Okay, so they basically submit a bid.
Yep.
There's a selection, and then there's a timeline over which they create this plan, which will then come to us to
Correct.
take a look at. What does that, I'm new. What does that process generally look like from a time frame?
I'm not, I think Jeff thought 4 to 6 months
Okay.
to do the fire master plan.
Awesome. Thanks. Just curious about that. I have one more, but I can defer to someone else if there's.
Go right ahead. Just keep going, and then
Water
Woodward, then Lockenberg.
restrictions. So we're in, which level? Should we just maybe highlight
Yep.
that while we're
Sorry,
all here
water
together?
restrictions 1. So there was some, there was a meeting last Friday, given all the heat, obviously, to look at where our water levels were at. Our director and manager of water utility went up to the reservoir today to film a video that you will be seeing in the coming days to talk about level 2 water restrictions. So we will be moving into we'll be moving into those ones.
Gosh, that's awful.
We'll be moving into those ones shortly. Again, it really depends on flow, and we're like dead average to where we would, we're dead on average. So, it's not, we really recovered a lot in that spring and having it stretch out. And, I just spent the last week up in the northern Valhallas, and there's a bunch of snow up in at the tops there still. So, I think that's really supported our water. It's also really supported our fire starts. Like if you look at BC wildfire fire map now, it's like, looks like we're in June or something, for this stretch of hot weather. So that's really positive in that, in our region, especially where we did gain a lot with that wetter spring, a lot of snowpack, lightning hits the upper third, primarily. So that's hitting, still wet areas. So, anyways, back to the water, expect, messaging out as soon as sort of the numbers hit that, because we are fairly reactionary again, but I expect it out this week, would be my anticipation.
And a follow-up.
So I know we're not at 100% communications right now because of staffing. So I'm just I'm always curious when I'm out walking around and I see people who obviously have not seen the water restrictions. So they're watering at inappropriate times, and I'm generally seeing this at about 6:30 a.m. when I'm walking the dogs. So I don't necessarily want to knock on their door and say, "Oh, are you familiar?" Is there any way that there would be some sort of postcard or something that I'm just trying to think, how do we communicate to people around that?
I can speak a bit about that. You know, as far as a postcard or something that we could, you know, that you could have a satchel of and hand them out. That's something that we could look into. Our typical push will be social media push, where we get it out there, and then also relying on the media. So we'll put out a media release to make sure that all the media has it, and that goes around. So the way that our communications program is built is such that it didn't all come down to one person, right? So there were key people in each department, and those key people are now working as a whole as we go through this, you know, transition. And so, you know, I can tell you that Charlie and Scott Eagleson went up to the reservoir to take their video, and then, you know, they were going to get in touch with Rob and Heather up at Fire, because they do a lot of those types of posts, and make sure that, you know, we got it all in the right place and everything like that. So from a sort of typical how is our communications working question, you know, I think it's still functioning quite well. You know, I think where we would start to, like, the longer we go without that position being filled, we start to lose that strategic direction in the larger organization. So, you know, it's really critical, and I know that Sarah's working on that and that strategy. So but as far as, you know, the new things, like, you know, if it's a postcard, and, you know, I'll have to check to see what they have down at Public Works, what we've done historically. But, you know, we can have a look at that and punch something out. I know that as well with bylaw, one of the big, you know, value propositions of us bringing bylaw, you know, into, you know, City Hall here was to be able to be a little bit more proactive and not necessarily punitive, but talk to these people and you know, educate. So that might be another opportunity that we can look at as well.
Yeah, I think people want to do the right thing, but they just don't always know what that is. Like, I was confused because I thought I was an even house, so I was doing it on even days, and then that switched, and I wasn't. So it does take a mindset to be able to follow it, and I think our main goal is just to make it as easy as possible for people to do the right thing.
And I think some of the electronic signage board seems to be one that, and the sign we have out here seems to be a high traffic point that, you know, I know on other things that we've been trying to communicate that, you know, that's been effective as well. So that's something else we can look at, because you're right, not everyone follows social media and necessarily picks up on it. So, you know, I think at least now the awareness is there over a number of years that we've had to have water restrictions. So hopefully it's not a message to convince people, it's just a message, as you say, of awareness.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Woodward, then Councillor Lochner.
Thank you. So I got a lot of that. I was going to ask about water and where we're at. So I just also wanted to say I work now near Lakeside Park, and I get to do a lap around the park for exercise. It's just totally beautiful. I have to say the crews are every day they're out there and through the heat, and it's just an amazing park, and all the new assets that are going in, and it's full and it's wonderful. So I wanted to thank you and the crew. That hard work is just, it's beautiful. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, and I'll pass that on. And certainly, you know, do pass it on to them when you see them too, and encourage others.
I do go over
Good.
it.
Yeah.
Ask about their machines or what they're doing.
Yeah.
So
no, it's wonderful, and I got to say, you know, we also got to tip our hats to these organizations. You know, like Nelson Hoops and that basketball court. Like, man, I have not been down there where there haven't been, you know, a couple of groups playing.
Yeah.
So to see that amount of use out of that, you know, compared to the amount of use you got out of the tennis court hoops, is just vastly different. So really, really neat to see, and hats off, you know, to them for making that happen.
thank you.
Councillor Lochner.
In that spirit, I want to congratulate staff on the pier. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think every time I've been down there, it's been buzzing. It's been great. Two comments or questions. The first is the possibility of getting a ladder on the outside. I think it's pretty important.
Counselor Page, the first night we were down, the first day it was sort of softly open and down there, and he said, and he was swimming, and he's like yelling at me, we need a ladder on the outside, and we need longer.
You do go under. Yeah.
And longer ladders. He said it was tough to get out like the ladder, like it needs like another
One more rung.
rung, so the ladders need to be longer, but.
Yeah. So that yes on the to all of that. You can swim underneath, but I heard.
Yeah, no, I was,
Yeah.
Not say that.
my mic wasn't on when I said that. Sorry, if I could just speak to the ladder as well, and that might really support, because we have restrictions on where you can't park motorized vessels anywhere along there, but there's a couple areas where we just can't have it that congested, so you won't be able to park boats at all. So the ladders might be a really effective deterrent as well at the show, because typically as someone coming up in a boat, you don't see a ladder and be like, oh, there's a part somewhere in a park. So maybe if we sprinkle a few ladders around the outside, that'll support that as well.
Totally. That'd be
With an extra rung.
with an extra rung. Yeah. The second thing at the pier is, and I'm sure this is something Keith and I talked about this, was the parking beside the Prestige. That's ours, isn't it?
No. No, the parking beside the Prestige is the Prestige's land and
Okay.
parking. The driveway to it
Is
is
ours.
city. So that's how
Okay.
we, cooperated together to say, we need this, hardscaped in a way that makes us a plaza, et cetera. We need to be able to close off
Yeah.
that parking when we have events, et cetera.
Okay.
So it was a partnership conversation and discussion on how that space is used.
Okay.
So it is joint use.
It's joint use there. Okay, so that's great that you're on it, because what I did notice a few times was how it kind of interrupts the flow of the space.
The pedestrian space.
Yeah, to the pedestrian space. So but okay, great, you're on it. The third thing around the pier is the the white tarp for the Ladybird. I understand that there's obviously been some mechanical challenges, but I'm assuming that those are working. One recommendation might be is curtains or something if we need to keep that up. Just the tarp's a little.
Yeah.
Definitely temporary.
Yeah, I figured.
We are. We have a meeting on Thursday. There's been numerous discussions so far with the engineering firm that designed the mechanical for it. And so really, what's happening, and of course, soft opening happens and it's like 30 plus whatever, right? And,
Yeah, for sure.
For 2 weeks. So, they're like with any building, I worked in the most beautiful building you've ever seen in Calgary, and it had been open for 2 years, right? It was the building that Water built. It was the water utility office, shaped like a wave. It was, a couple points off being the first LEED platinum building in North America. I was there 2 years after it opened, and they were still working out the bugs in the mechanical. So obviously that's a bigger building, but in any building you have bugs in the mechanical to get figured out when it starts up. That's where we're at.
Sure.
The tarp, very temporary.
Yeah.
We're working to get it out of there, understanding, and as well, all the sort of accoutrement that's on the floor in there that isn't intended to be, like the humidifiers and extra cooling and fans and things like that. So,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, well, my take on it is it's not necessarily a bad thing if you needed to, because that heat's so intense.
Yeah.
That if you need a barrier, curtain's fine because you see perfectly well from the other three sides. So
Yeah.
just some feedback if that's an issue.
Thanks.
Just something nice there. The fourth thing on the pier is seating. So the one bench there, and I was pleased to see people just sitting on the ground around underneath. I thought it was wonderful, actually. But there was a comment from a few people while I was there that if they could have another bench or two, they'd really appreciate that.
That is coming as well.
Okay.
So the existing benches that are there, my understanding, and I'll have to confirm this to be fair, is those existing benches aren't consistent. I don't think they put the ones in that sort of match the rest of the look, have they? They're just sort of a standard park bench that's in there currently.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's more benches that are coming that will fill that out, that are, exactly, that fit in with the pier. You could only imagine how excited the architect was to see those benches down.
Great, thanks.
Councillor Page.
Fifth thing on the pier. Five, 3 or 5 or 6. Wonderful. It's great. All the great things. When you're trying to escape from the shade at the lower area in future planning, it would be maybe worth considering filling in the dock behind underneath. You know, when you're down there, people are always trying to skip. They constantly are like trying to get to the shade around the stairs on that little bit of shade that's behind. But you have, I keep observing young parents with children setting up. People have even brought bikes down, and it really just speaks to me that whole void directly between the stairs underneath, which is all shaded, would be a great place to set up to watch your kids swim and get out of the sun. It's already providing shade, and it might just be about putting a block of dock back there at some future stage. I think would be nice and helpful. The wayfinding signs that have shown up in some places look amazing. In other places, the pixelation of the text makes it incredible. There are signs that are impossible to read. The font is too small. The quality of the print on it just doesn't get to the resolution that you have a readable component. You have a list of all the things you can go to, and you can't make out any of the words. So there's some deficiencies there. Primarily, though, on almost all of them, they seem to all need to have a second sign on the opposite side. You come along, if you're going in a certain direction, it directs you to here. You come the other way, you've got a blank piece. Now you can turn around. It really feels to me, for completeness, they need to be double-sided. So no matter what direction you're heading in, you're being told where the signs are trying to direct you. But yeah, I can point out a few of them or send some pictures over, but there are some that are just, you could never read that. I have good eyesight.
Okay. Yeah, please do send that. You know, I'll say, so I came in later on with the wayfinding project, and you know, we ultimately came to the decision that with this project, it's going to be a bit of an iterative process to find out where we actually need them. So this feedback is really great, right? Like, you know, what you're seeing, is there some that we are missing? And we started small, knowing that we can grow this over time. But, you know, the actual locations, things like that. So know that we're keen to adjust that. Also know that this is one of those filler jobs that we have Public Works working on with the installation. So we got through spring, so now they're working on it. It's great to see. And so, yeah, feedback like that is valued.
Yeah, they're a great addition.
Yeah.
I know it's been needed for a long time. We were there at the beginning of the project, so we've got the design direction, and that's good. But yeah, there'll be some refinement. I'll send you some examples.
I'll also just make a note, since we're talking about things, that everybody just noticed it got a bit quieter here. So we had the AC unit on. It trips off when it hits 43 degrees. It's directly in sun right now. So we've hit 43 degrees up there. So obviously not, you know, ambient, like not true temperature, but in the sun, 43. So once it drops back down below, it'll kick back on. But yeah,
Need a tree up
need a
there.
tree up there, or the white tarp. We could repurpose it.
Always making use of what we got.
Mr. Payne.
Would I be able to find a map of where the wayfaring signs are, so I could wander around and look at them? Is that available anywhere? Or?
Yeah, I'm sure that we have a plan for it.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. Should I just reach out to Development Services then? Or?
Yeah, no, I'll send an email. Typically what I do is I try and gather all this in, and then
That's great,
all of
thank
my
you.
team wakes up in the morning and they're like, what? Oh, right, it was a council night.
Yeah, not obviously anything
And
urgent,
you can
but
send it out to all of us. That's,
yeah.
I mean, then this information goes
I've
to all
spotted a
parties,
few,
not just
but
one party.
I'm interested to see the ones that I
I will-
can't see from a different set of eyes.
Josephine and Vernon.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll, you know, I think that the original map was in the strategy, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
it might have been, I'm not sure if it's been refined over time, yeah.
Okay, so I could find that.
Okay.
myself.
It's been heavily refined.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for staff counselors? Okay, well, we have a few minutes left for some council reports. Does anybody have anything to report on? Councillor Page.
I think the only thing for anyone who hadn't caught it is just through my AKBLG work and the Columbia River Treaty, an agreement in principle has been arrived at between the parties. This means that now there'll be a public engagement process from the province of BC to see how people feel about it and see if anything else needs to be adjusted. There's still a very long process of converting this agreement into both soliciting the feedback, but then turning it into actual legal treaty language on both sides adopted by the houses. We're years away from a new agreement, but it's a major milestone. We'll be meeting more about that this week in terms of what that public engagement will look like and what from a local government's perspective we will be advocating for, but did want to make note that work after many years is now at this milestone. Other than that, I don't have anything else to report.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think we all got that. I think I got that 4 times. I mean, people are pretty excited about an agreement in principle. I mean, and you do have to be cognizant of the fact that it is still going to be it was a long time getting to here, and it's probably going to be a bit of a trip going forward.
I would just highlight, so there's approximately 4 million cubic feet of additional flexibility that Canada will gain. It loses about, I feel like it's 50% of its allocation for power management that comes, the power benefit that comes from the states. And part of that, of course, was because when the treaty was originally enacted, there was major investments by both Canada and the US to put the facilities in that have provided all the power and flood control, and that portion of the agreement has that benefit has been received for the most part. So Canada really went with the position of wanting to gain that additional flexibility for Indigenous, cultural, and Canadian domestic purposes, not being obliged to set it down to the states, and was willing to sacrifice the hydro monetary benefit that the US was sending our way. So there are some changes in those. We won't be getting the same kinds of monies flowing across the Canadian border, but we will be able to use the water on our side with more autonomy. One of the big wins, I guess, for that agreement. We'll see how the public thinks.
Council, did you have a question for him about his report? Okay.
Yeah, just
to you and
really
then Council Pinero.
Would that have some potential impact on our water license as a hydro utility?
No,
not really.
No, not on our argument, I don't think.
That additional flexibility wouldn't give us more capacity to draw more?
No.
No, okay.
Council Pinero.
So just from the library, they're going to continue to have extended hours throughout the week as it continues to be hot. So that's going to last until Sunday, and the library will be open from 10 in the morning till 8 p.m. at night for those that are stuck downtown and need a place to cool off.
Perfect. The library's always been very good at providing a cooling center, and congratulations. Tell them that we're also thankful for having them extend their hours. So,
Mayor, maybe I could add to that. Sorry, I was remiss in not sort of providing a bit of an update on that around our, this recent heat and how we're supporting those folks that need to get out. So I had a discussion with our emergency program manager about it. So while we had the heat warning in place, that EMCR provides funding to, extend hours, open up, provide water, that type of thing. So we were able to work with Anchors and the library to ensure that, that they were supported for that. The extreme heat warning has ended, but we anticipate it'll be coming right back on. So, that's just one of those things that'll ramp up, ramp down. I'm not sure if Anchors has kept things open, but certainly a lot of really positive, if you could call it positive, the providing the location for the folks. You know, we heard from anchors that they certainly had a couple of folks that, you know, were in a really bad state that came in what would have been after hours normally that they were able to support. So I think the library's, you know, seen a lot of that as well. So, you know, just feedback from the emergency program that this new sort of partnership that we're exploring with the social sector on all of this, where we, and you know, help to get them extra funding, keep them open, kind of do some coordination and organization on that was really well received and effective over this last stretch, and we'll need it again over the weekend here by the looks of things.
And also to remember that a person can drop into the recreation center during their operating hours, which is like from 6 a.m. till 8 p.m. So that's another place that one can go to as is necessary. So there are some other options, and let's just all be good neighbors. I mean, we probably all know who the senior is that lives next door in the house that was built in 1900, and if you don't see them out doing something to go and check in them, because the senior population is very vulnerable during these heat episodes. So Nelson's a very caring community, so I know that people will be keeping an eye out on their street and their neighbors. I am at Councillor Pero Payne. I imagine you have a report.
I do have a few things. I just want to mention to everyone that the Nelson Museum and Archives opened what I considered to be just a fascinating exhibit on July 5th called Utopia Unveiled, about the intentional communities that came to this area probably in the 50s and 60s, I think. It was very crowded, very well attended, and many of the people who came here to participate in those communities were in attendance. It was fascinating to speak to them and to see them side by side with photos from that time period. And I think Bill did a great article in the newspaper, but highly recommend to go and just get a flavor of what that was all about and some of the individuals that were involved. They got some great stories. The other community event that I really enjoyed, and there's just so many, was the Nelson Community Food Center had its community dinner, where everyone in the community was welcomed in to have a dinner. And I just want to really do a shout out to not only the volunteers that participated and made the salad and served the food and cleaned up after us as we participated in the power outage briefly, but it was still very light in there and the food was all warm. But there were 4 restaurants around town who contributed food to that meal, and it was the Tandoori Grill, Yum Sung, the Hume Restaurant, and Broken Hill. All very delicious food. More people could have come. There was food for probably double the 70 individuals that were there, so they were able to distribute that food the next day at the general day that people come and are able to pick up some food. The heat is affecting my ability to process, so I've got things written down here. I thought it was just incredible, the event that our fire services collaborated with a variety. I think there were 4 or 5 other entities there helping us understand better, wildfire preparedness and all of the opportunities we have to be ready when those threats come to our community. And our own chief, Jeff Hebert, was cooking burgers and hot dogs in the incredible heat, all of them wearing the dark blue that they seem to favor in those. And I was melting in the shade, so it was great. There was a good number of people there. There was entertainment. It was something they wanted to try that was new, and I hope they do it again when it's not so blisteringly warm, so they maybe see a few more people. But it was definitely worthwhile going down and talking to them one-on-one about so many opportunities that our residents can take advantage of to fire smart their properties, their neighborhoods, and just be ready when some of those situations arise for us. Those are the key things. I do want to add my shout out to the library who, those are individuals who did not train in social work, but they seem to be big-hearted people who have just come forward and worked. I've heard so many great comments about our Stéphane Couteau emergency, I can't remember his exact title, sorry, Chris?
Program manager.
Emergency program manager, and how he's been so collaborative with different organizations in trying to make this all happen and take care of anyone who needs that. There's so many organizations that have stepped up, and that's one of the things that makes me feel incredibly happy and proud to be a resident of this city and to watch people when we are in need. As the mayor said, to step forward and take care of our neighbors and those people who need it. And we often know who they are in our neighborhoods. So that was really great to hear in many organizations that I've been at, the positive response that we've had from how collaboratively that work has come together. Really great to see. Those were sort of the key things, but yeah, lots of exciting stuff going on. Get out there, honestly, that Utopia Unveiled was pretty fascinating. It was jam-packed when I was there, so I'll have to go back and take a deeper look at some of the photos and some of the things that were going on out there. I did grow up in Woodstock, but it was Woodstock, Ontario, so that was not part of my scene, but it was pretty exciting to see some of those people who did come here and create just an amazing part of what our history has been. So I think it's worthwhile to take a look.
A lot of hair.
There was a lot of hair just going
A lot
everywhere.
of hair back in those days.
Back in the day.
On that note.
Okay, so I guess, so I attended a few of those things that Councillor Payne has attended, so I don't need to talk about those. Two interesting things that kind of came into my schedule in the last couple of weeks was that I had the opportunity to meet the new chair of BCUC, and that was a very interesting, informal chat, but lovely to meet him. His daughter happens to be here. It's the great thing about Nelson. Eventually, everybody lives in Nelson, so then you get to meet everybody else. So, yeah. So that was a great opportunity to meet with him. And on that same day, I actually had a meeting with the Consul General of the People's Republic of China, which was interesting. He had requested a courtesy visit, and so it was wonderful to be able to have him come in, and we had a interesting discussion about all kinds of different things and about Nelson for about an hour or so. Another one of those opportunities. He had never been here. Part of his role is to do outreach. He's been to many communities in the province, and he was really surprised by the cosmopolitan nature of Nelson, which, I mean, those of us who live here know that that's exactly what it is. And it's always eye-opening for those that come from other places to see all that we have to offer here. So that's my report. So if I could have anybody else, don't want to leave anybody out. Okay, so if I could have a motion to recess, moved by Councillor Panero, seconded by Councillor Woodward. All those in favor? And that carries. We'll reconvene at 7 o'clock. And look at, we have a full gallery. It's always unfortunate that the camera doesn't get to turn around to look at how many people we have in the gallery this evening. It's all wonderful. Our first activity is we're on item number 10, and it is our cultural presentation. And so we have the Capitol Theatre Kids Summer Theatre Program. Jessie Greenway, the stage director of this year's summer youth program, The Little Mermaid, along with youth participants, will perform a short excerpt from the musical. The Capitol Theatre Summer's Youth Program offers Nelson's young talents an opportunity to engage in high-quality theatre productions. Through professional training and performance experience, the program nurtures creativity, teamwork, and confidence, enriching our community's cultural landscape and supporting the next generation of artists. So I see all kinds. I see our cultural development officer back there. I see the executive director of the Capitol Theatre back there. I don't know who Jessie Greenway is, my apologies, but I'm sure you're back there as well somewhere. So if whoever wants to come up and do whatever, and if you're singing, I would ask you to come to the front and I'll just move. And if you can be here, because that's where the camera will be best. So you can come up and do your introduction as well, Jessie, right up here, and the team for singing up here, and then if Stephanie has a few words.
No, I just want to say thank you for your support of the Capitol Theatre every year. We very much appreciate that and support. Thanks you for that. And now over to Jessie.
Shall I come up here?
Yeah, so up here. So you'll soon see what. So up here, and then your performers.
Yeah.
Come on up here, and then you'll see that you're on camera.
There I am.
There you go.
Okay. Hi. As we just said, my name is Jesse. I'm one of the directors this year in the Summer Youth Program. I thought I'd tell you a little bit about the program, a little bit about our team, and maybe just a tiny bit about the play that we're doing this year, which you've already been told is Little Mermaid. The Summer Youth Program has been going since the mid-90s. This will be play number 36, which is, yeah, thank you. We're stoked to have done that many. I started as an actor, performer, as a young teenager. Malaika, our musical director, is in the same boat. It's such an honor to come back and be one of the leaders and to be helping put it on and planning and doing all the legwork that goes into, the surprising amount of legwork that goes into production like that. But we're not the only members of the alumni team. If you've lived in Nelson for a while, I mean, you guys might be on that team. I know a doctor, I know an architect, I know lots of people that are members of the community, and it doesn't just train you for like a life in theater or performance. I think it can be really useful in a lot of careers. Yeah, so our director team is Malaika, myself, and Jody Edmonds is our choreographer this year. I'll tell you a little bit about our play. Little Mermaid is, for me, like a childhood classic. I'm sure it is for a lot of other people. Hopefully when we give you the song in a minute here, it'll spark some nostalgia. Great play. It's about youth. It's about finding your path in life and especially finding your voice in life. Malaika, do you want to introduce the song? I'll trade off here.
I would love to. Hi, everyone. My name is Malaika Horswell. I'm the musical director for the show this year, and I'm so honored and pleased to introduce Kiara Jarrett, who is playing Ariel in this summer's production. I mostly am here to preface you that the proper tracks that we're using in the show, because of licensing stuff, have to live at the Capitol Theatre, so we are using the practice tracks. So when a random voice says, rehearsal tracks at all the most inopportune moments. It's just motivation to see the show for real, but you don't have to hear that. I think this song needs no introduction, so I will let Kiara take it away. Yeah, let's just I'll put it right here. Okay, here we go. Let's see if we're connected.
Classic.
Rehearsal tracks.
To look at this stuff, isn't it neat? Wouldn't you think my collection is complete? Wouldn't you think I'm the girl who has everything? Look at this trove, treasures untold. How many wonders can one cavern hold? Looking around, do you think? Sure, she's got everything. I've got gadgets and gizmos aplenty. I have who's-its and what's-its galore. You want a thingamabobs? I've got 20. But who cares? No big deal. I want more. I want to be where the people are. I want to see them dancing, walking around on those, what do you call them? Oh, feet. Flipping your fins, you don't get too far. Legs are required for jumping, dancing, strolling along down. What's that word again? Street. Up where they walk, up where they run, up where they stay all day in the sun, wandering free. Wish I could be part of that world. What would I give if I could live up to these waters? What would I pay to spend a day warm on the sand? Betcha on land they understand, bet they don't. Reprimand their daughters, bright young women, safe swimming, ready to stand. Ready to know what the people know. Ask them like questions and get some answers like, what's fire and what is it? What's the word? Burn. When did I turn? Wouldn't I love to explore that shore above? Lord of the sea. Wish I could be.
Rehearsal tracks.
Part of that.
I'll just tell you a little bit more about our team. This year we have 36 kids that are performing, so a lot. And last year we started a new side of the program, which is a tech side. And that is kids coming in, building props, building sets, working behind the stage, basically running the show, doing lights. That was 6 last year, and we've got almost double that this year. So we're super proud of the direction that the program's heading. And we're extremely grateful for you guys letting us in here to show you a sneak peek at our show. It starts Thursday next week, and it goes Friday, Saturday, and then a Sunday matinee. So thank you very much for your time. Thanks,
We have so much talent here at Nelson. Thank you again for coming. And if you want to stay and watch a few minutes of council, you can, or you're free to go and find a cooler spot. But thank you again. And for those who need to know, the Capitol Theater is air conditioned. So next week we are expecting highs still in the mid to high ranges of the 30s. And besides having a great show to go and watch, a little bit of air conditioning for the evening. So next up, we have public participation. Is there anybody here that wanted to speak tonight? I'm looking. I don't see anybody. So we will move on to delegations. So our first delegation for the evening is Robin Dupont. He was our 2023 Cultural Ambassador for the City of Nelson, and he's going to present to council on his experiences and accomplishments over the past year in this esteemed role. Did you want to?
I'm just going to read a brief bio.
Okay, that's good. I was going to read the back. I didn't want to steal the background that I've got here. So, Joy, please do the introduction. Thank you.
I'm pleased to welcome with us here tonight Robin Dupont, the City of Nelson's 2023 Cultural Ambassador. Robin's ceramic studio is tucked into the mountainside in the picturesque Slocan Valley. A compound of wood fire kilns is where he can be found mixing, moving, and firing clay and occasionally other materials. With an MFA from Utah State University, Robin has taught at multiple post-secondary institutions in Canada and is currently faculty in the ceramics program at Selkirk College, Kootenay Studio Arts in Nelson, BC. As a ceramics educator, Robin has also taught thematic residencies at the Banff Center for the Arts and Medalta. Internationally recognized in his field for his contributions to the genre of atmospheric firing in the last 25 years, Robin was the recipient of the Northwest Mayor Wask Award of Excellence in 2021 and, of course, named Nelson's 2023 Cultural Ambassador. Most recently, Robin was He was the behind-the-scenes pottery expert on the Great Canadian Pottery Throwdown. Welcome, Robin.
Oh, thank you. That's awesome. How do I control my images?
So you can just go with an arrow button.
Have you got slides for him? Okay. Can he run his own or?
So you have to open.
Did you find it? It's just there, double click.
Okay. Us artists are usually awesome at this tech stuff.
Okay, don't worry.
It's very cool.
We didn't have it running at 4 o'clock, so.
Here we go. And then slideshow or view. I think I can do this and then pause it maybe. Now can I pause it?
I think the arrow can get you.
Yeah. Oh, okay, so it's not just going to rifle through. Okay. Thank you for that introduction, both of you. So I'm basically going to rifle through my year. I had it was an insane year to be to represent Nelson as a cultural ambassador. The TV show thing came in at the last minute, or not the last minute, about halfway through the year, and just happened really fast. But more than that, I hope to kind of portray some of the interactions that I got in the community, the positive attraction, if you will, or the positive reaction to Nelson, a town of 10,000 people in the interior of British Columbia. Literally, people's jaws would drop when they're like, "What? Like Nelson has a cultural ambassador? I don't think my huge city has a cultural ambassador." So I just felt it was, I don't know. And I felt like those positive ripples with everyone I interacted were definitely, I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of those people after telling them about our fine city, say come visit our museum or bake or even enroll in some of our programs in school. So,
use arrow over.
Let's see here. Okay, sorry. My year started off in January, as everyone else's did, with a jam-packed month of booting all around California. So I spent the month at a residency at just north of Napa called Cobb Mountain Artisan Art and Ecology. That's where these pictures here are from. That focus was firing a huge wood kiln that took the most of 2 weeks. And then for the other 2 weeks while I was there,
I did several trips to LA to deliver work, visit museums, collections, galleries, and then some connections up in San Francisco. And let's see what else I have in here. Yeah, some more collections and connect with colleagues, kind of scheme on future projects. And yeah. So after my month in California, back to Canada, and that's when the call came in right around end of February to basically, it came in to basically be hired by CBC and 2 different production companies to be the pottery lead. So basically do everything ceramic on a reality pottery television show, which was amazing. And this is when that started. The image on the left is us auditioning over 200 people or potters from across the country as the competitors, which happened at the Gardner Museum, which is the only ceramic specific museum in Canada. And the person on the right is Martina Lanton, who is a colleague of mine who runs the ceramic program at AU Arts in Calgary. And she just happened to be doing a residency there at the time. So that was kind of a neat overlap. We got to have a bunch of meals, and I got to go behind the scenes with her and check out the collection at the Gardner. But I felt like this is where my year started to get nuts with getting involved with the TV people. I literally was the first person that was hired on as that knew anything about clay. So they had bought the rights to a previous show. Maybe some of you have seen it in the UK, which was a great pottery throwdown as well. And I was responsible for basically making everything clay happen. So onward to the next experience. Between my life seemed to happen between Zoom meetings, between 2 production companies, one in California and one in Toronto, and meetings with CBC. It would have been way easier to just make the TV show from scratch, but because we were beholden to another format, it was a really interesting process. Between one of those Zoom meetings, Eden and I, my wife, packed it up and headed down to the Archie Bray Foundation in Helena, Montana, again to scheme with some colleagues about future projects. And then again, back to Canada. The next thing on the list was, I believe this was the end of March, and the Canadian Clay Symposium happens every 2 years in Vancouver, or Burnaby actually. And my wife and I restored this 1959 Airstream into a gallery. So every symposium, or not just the symposiums actually, other ceramic conferences that happen around the country or Western Canada, we'll curate a group of potters and ceramic artists to show work and then present that to the public. So there was that, a number of other pieces in other shows for that time. Heading north now, about 2 weeks later, I taught a workshop up in Prince George. And my motivation part of my motivation for doing this was this storied seam of clay that some of my mentors had used but had been long overgrown and now was only accessed by boat. And the person hiring me to do the workshop claimed that they knew where it was. So we went out on this boat, dug about 700 pounds of clay and brought it back on this poor fellow's boat. This is kind of a vein that goes through my art, is using natural materials to make my work. I won't get too much into that. So then back home for more Zoom meetings, and then had to move to Vancouver. The first order of business with the TV job was to build out the studio, which was really fun as a potter, a starving artist. gets to spend 250 grand on his dream studio for them to film the show in. That was really fun, but a lot of work and too many cooks in the kitchen, let's say. And then after we built out the studio, literally like the next day we start filming. And so when we start filming, the pottery expert basically puts on his production hat and gets to tell Seth Rogen what to do. Seth was one of the judges on, he owned actually the production company that brainchilded the whole project. But he was also one of the judges on the TV show. This was kind of the production scene. This was a really bizarre, the whole thing was a bizarre realm for a potter to like sit in for 6 months. It was like kind of a dream come true, but kind of the most stressful thing I've ever done in my life. Learned a lot. TV people are amazing, but crazy. And yeah, I loved this idea. This was neat. I sat in this chair for 10 hours a day, many days a week. But the neat thing is with the headset and the TV in front of you, you could see all of what was going on, and I could talk to anyone in the building and, I don't know, point directions of cameras and different things like that. And tell them I was the cultural ambassador of Nelson. Then back to Nelson to pick up with my students and bless the people of Selkirk College that arranged for me to be away for that first month of September and get my students started without me. I feel like that's a big part of my job or my life is like it's one of the hats I wear, which I really value, and I feel like help contribute to the culture of this city is like helping people find their artistic voice. And this is a picture of a couple of students in front of one of the kilns. In the kiln compound that I built over the years, we host visiting artists. We have classes, and that's where I produce all of my own work. So that's out in the Slocan Valley. And then here to finish off, here's a funny shot of me in the studio. And just to finish off, I feel like I want to just say bravo for what this delineation of a cultural ambassador signals to the rest of the world. I wish I could wave a magic wand and you could see the reaction of all the people that I explained what it was to. But kudos or bravo for our cultural identity, for contributing to our cultural identity, not just municipally, but internationally as well. People were damn impressed with Nelson all over the world when they learned about what it was. Bravo for showing the world that culture is a priority in our community. Bravo for helping Nelson be a more interesting place. And bravo for not letting economics define every decision we make. Thank you for naming me the ambassador and this opportunity.
And I just want to say, thanks for the I'm sure council might have a couple questions for you, and I just want to thank you again for the lovely mugs that you made for all of us. A little different, unique mug for each one of us, and so we really appreciate the gift that you gave us at the end of your year. So thank you again for the lovely gift. Any questions? I watched. I don't know how many other councillors watched. I'll just lead off. I was fascinated. I've watched that great throwdown from England, and then I've watched the one here. It was great to see it on Granville. I was like, look at that, they're on Granville Island. Look at that. Seth Rogen looks like he actually knows how to do pottery. So is he quite a gifted, or was that you teaching him in between every scene that he had to get on? And then, because it was like, sometimes I was like, man, he got that. Now it was like, now everybody has to make what I just made. And I'm sort of thinking, wow, like.
What's up?
TV magic?
Yeah, it was a TV magic, yeah.
No, Seth is very good at making pottery for how much experience he has. I think he fell in love with pottery actually with the British version.
Right.
I think the British version came out 8 years ago, so he's only been making for 8 years, and it's a very technical medium and hard to master. So he's doing well. I wouldn't call him a master yet, but I was pleasantly surprised by his contribution to the show. His brand is very, I'm always stoned and I'm always like saying the most funny thing in the room, but he was actually a very thoughtful judge and artist in his own right. So definitely made the show a better show. Yeah, I was kind of dreading, honestly, working with him, and he was probably my biggest ally in the whole process.
Excellent. Well, that's good to hear.
We might get him here yet.
Yeah.
It should be a natural fit, really.
He should come, and we can do some more filming because we have Amy Bohegan, who's a past cultural ambassador. We could get something going on. We could have like a cultural ambassador reunion of all the ones that we've had from before you, and then do a show hosted by Seth Rogen.
I would love it.
Do one of the episodes of Amy's new show.
Yeah. Councillor Woodward, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for taking this role seriously and going out, and that was kind of the vision of it, going out and like sort of spreading the good word about Nelson and showing what we can do. And I just, like, when we go, I find when we've gone to, big conferences and stuff and people see the name tag and where you're from, it carries that same, I guess, weight, and that people say, oh, you're from Nelson. Wow. Somebody always has a story about Nelson, how I traveled through there, and, it's kind of got that magic. So I just want to say thank you for continuing to spread that. It's a great tradition. I was wondering, at the end of the show, what do you feel like the show is this a show, or do you think it's actually like promoting pottery as an art form? Does it step above just entertainment? Did you feel good about your inclusion in that and helping that? Like, it's kind of like, what was the background feeling for you of being part of this television show?
Oh, there's
about pottery.
Yeah, I am proud of being part of it for sure. I don't know if I'm proud to have done the role that I did. There was other roles I could have done, and I feel like I'm glad I didn't do those. I don't think this question has like a clear black and white answer. I feel like there was a strong thing behind the scenes that was entertainment, and I learned that was kind of bristly burr with me. Like, I'm an educator.
Right.
And I was always trying to raise the bar, and actually Seth was too. That's where we became, our alliance was like, we were both really trying to make this as educational and the strongest representation of our ceramic community in our country as possible. And the TV land had to be more concerned with entertainment. And I feel like we hit a good balance. I feel like we had an amazing, I feel really good about all of the people that were cast, all of the, I feel really good about it. I think that, to your first point though, about sharing that need, or that how culturally Nelson hits above its weight class, and how you travel. We've all traveled. I'm sure we've all traveled and been like, oh, you get those envious eyes of like, oh, I want to live in Nelson. Like, how do I make that happen, sort of thing. And it seems like the coolest little mountain town ever. I feel like we all know that, but that's what I was trying to figure out how to share, is like through this experience, or this honor of being the cultural ambassador, like I saw that in like another dimension that I hadn't seen it before, but which I thought was was really meaningful. I wish I could, like I say, with my magic wand, show people, but I just want you to know those ripples are out there. That positive, like lots of people are attracted to this town when artists and not just artists, but the people doing the making Nelson what it is, getting out there. Those things make ripples.
Thank you. And your mug is my wife's absolute favorite.
Oh, right
cup,
on.
and
Yeah.
she uses it every single day. So
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I feel like I'm tempted to go into like why I make the mugs or why I went to art school and that, but that means a lot. That's I went to art school to be a painter or sculptor, but what you just said is, in a nutshell, is why I ended up making pots. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Councillor? Councillor Tate.
I have a quick one. Might not be quick. Thanks to Eden and your family for supporting you through a very exciting year and representing us and supporting him to represent us. I have a question that might not be short, but hopefully you can encapsulate it. What have you not yet done with clay that you would like to try?
Well, back to first year art school again, like I was really scared to declare a major because I had to decide in the first year what I was going to major in, and I chose clay ceramics because I felt like I would never exhaust the possibilities of it. There's a great book out there titled Clay by Susan Staubach. I can't remember the subtitle, but it just goes through humanity and talks about all the different things that clay has been used through history. So everything from plumbing to culinary to architecture to like nourishing our bodies. And like I go through that book from time to time, and I gotta say, like after 25 or more years, like I'm definitely not bored. I have sketchbooks full of ideas that, so the short answer is plenty. I feel like there's a lot I haven't done, is the short answer, I guess.
That's exciting. Well, thank you so much for coming and updating us and sharing your experience with us. And it just sounds like it was a fantastic year, and all the best to you with your future endeavors going on. And if something spectacular, come back and we'll line you up to talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Just because you were just once an ambassador, always an ambassador, in terms of, we'd love to hear the successes and to hear the great stories that come out of this program that we started. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it, and thank all of you for your hard work.
Thank you.
Okay, our next delegation is Nelson at its Best, Together Nelson. Together Nelson, a project of the Nelson at its Best Society, will present their findings on their recent tax help clinic to council, an initiative of the Community Action Strategy to Reduce Poverty. Presenting to council are project management teams Emma Dresen from Kootenai Career Development Society, Alex Hawes, the Executive Director of Nelson Community Food Center, and project manager Margie Lesko. And and I've got 3.
That's not the right people, I don't think.
So make sure you don't have to touch it, but you have to be somewhat close.
Hi. She can see us all now.
And do we just cue forward on the slideshow when it comes up? Or how do we, sorry. Thanks, Jesse. Yeah.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, there it is at the bottom. Yeah. Awesome. I can go from there. I just didn't know.
As a side note, clay is also used in insulators and transformers.
Yeah.
Oh, this will be PDF.
No, I can see that clay in terms of so many interesting things that you can do with clay.
Just saying.
Like the scale of the last picture you showed, like how would you build that?
Just because this is a PDF, not a slideshow.
Oh.
So I'm wondering, is that comfortable if we just scroll down then? to go?
Or if you go file and then view full screen. Top left, under the menu bar. No, very, very top left. Very top left. Where do you see the menu?
There.
Okay, thank you.
Full screen.
Full screen mode. Awesome.
Oh, there we
Thank
go.
you. And then it'll go forward.
Yep.
Amazing. Thank you. Sorry. So tech is clearly not our specialty. I'm Samantha Zaitzoff. I work for Kootenai Kids Society, and I'm part of the leadership roundtable for Together Nelson, and I'm here with Margie Lesko, who's our, sorry, I didn't know if you recognize, who's our Nelson Tax Help Clinic project manager, and really the glue that held us together, really pulled us off. And Emma Dreisen, who's part of the leadership roundtable as well, and works at Kootenai Career Development Society. And so our purpose tonight is really to talk about Together Nelson, the Ending Poverty Initiative of Nelson at its Best, in partnership with Nelson Community Food Centre, Kootenai Kids Society, and Kootenai Career Development Society, piloted a free in-person tax clinic in March and April of this year. And it was an economic development initiative aimed at increasing the economic well-being of 100 individuals in our community who are living below living wage, by filing their taxes and then accessing valuable refunds and benefits and credits that they wouldn't have had access to without filing their taxes. It was a really successful initiative that is part of our Nelson's 4-year poverty reduction action strategy, and we're in our second year, and this is one of our identified priorities. And tonight we're here to talk about the outcomes, specifically who participated and what we learned about how to reach participants and really affect change, and the need for this type of clinic and what we heard from people, and the economic benefits and impacts that came directly into our community as an outcome from it, as well as say a huge thank you to the city for supporting the UBCM funding and the ability for us to host this and successfully initiate this. It is massive, the economic outcome for individuals, and we'll talk more about those actual numbers too. And then also to help spread the word, because it's a part of this, and Margie will talk more as well too about the ease of being able to conduct the tax clinics, and really the community volunteer income tax programs, and we'll refer to them as CVITP in the presentation, but really we offered an enhanced tax clinic, and we'll talk more to that specifics that were for our community needs in our presentation as well. And so what was done? As mentioned about it being an enhanced CVITP clinic, it's enhanced because we decided to set the eligibility as living wage for our community rather than the income level thresholds for CVITP. And there's a substantial difference between those income amounts. So for example, one person for CVITP eligibility would be $35,000 a year for household income, but the living wage in our community, which, yeah, I'm forgetting exactly, it's 40, I was trying to remember the hourly wage. I think it's 2014. I can't remember the exact hourly wage that
Just
are.
over $21.
$21 an hour.
Just over.
Just over $21 an hour, sorry. So that equaled out to $41,000 a year for the individual. So that's $6,000 difference, and it kept increasing by the amount of people in household, and we can talk more about those specifics if you want the numbers as well. But really the intention of that was to meet people that were living below living wage in our community and address that gap that was a part of the tax clinics. We began with the promotion using posters and announcements and ad, and we got just about half of our enrollment through that way. But then we discovered that we needed more effective ability to reach individuals, and so we discovered through being at a high-used, well-established, low-income program, and being in person and having conversations in person is where we got over half of our enrollment after. And you can see 53% up on the slide. And phone, which is what refers to as what came through the posters, was 47%.
This growth would be expanded if we continued to offer the programs yearly. And that's part of what we're hoping for the information to be able to be transferred and to be taken on. And word of mouth is really where the high percentage of individuals started sharing information and coming to the clinic and knowing about it. Information was given at drop-off, and the returns were prepared without individuals there, and then they were called to come back and review them and have tax information shared. And as mentioned, our goal was 100 people, and we had 101 reached, so we successfully aimed for our target and reached 101 people. And of these, 85% were working age, 19 to 65 years of age, and almost half claimed employment income, which included 9% self-employed income as well. And as we know from the community action strategy, that more than 18.6% of our individuals in our community are living below living wage currently. And I'm going to pass over to Margie for outcomes.
Thanks, thank you. Oh, maybe I'll try this one. Okay.
Stuck right. Yes, there you go.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Sam. Okay, so we are back. We were here in March. And this slide we showed to you. We said, these are the outcomes that we anticipated. So we thought we'd refresh your memory and say, and just remind you that the outcomes, we knew there'd be economic benefits. We were looking at understanding how that expanded model impacted participants, and we also wanted to take it beyond the tax clinic and have continuity and scalability with a guide. So I'll tell you a little bit about how that went. The need. So tax clinics, as you know, there are a proven poverty reduction strategy that improves participants' economic well-being. This clinic demonstrated 3 indicators or reasons why clinics like this are needed. Gross income. 50% of the participants claimed a gross income of less than $15,000 per annum. Now, this very low income, as Sam had mentioned, may reflect that close to half of all participants were recruited in person during Nelson Community Food Center's Good Food Bank program, which is a low-income food program. So it supports a low-income demographic with free food essentials such as fresh produce and staples. It's still a pretty high number. Now, back taxes. 17 people, 17% of the total participants filed 63 back tax returns, which is 38% of the total returns that we filed. Those returns ranged as far back as 10 years. Some of them were, actually we had a couple that were a little bit earlier that were paper returns that needed to be done. So it also demonstrated a need that folks really appreciated an opportunity to come to a pretty much barrier-free clinic, be met in person, and supported to file their 10 years of back taxes. Yeah, and then first-time users. So we had 37% never had used a tax preparation service, and of that 37%, 11 reported as newcomers to Canada. So we might expect that newcomers to Canada, first year here, might not be familiar with the tax system and appreciate a bit of support in terms of navigating that. But these numbers indicate that this clinic actually supported people that were not newcomers, that have been in our community for our country for a while, and that it also supported community members that had never used a tax filing service before. So, the economic benefit. So the economic benefit, I'd like to talk about 2 things. One is measurable and one was not measurable. The measurable economic benefit, this slide we also showed you in March, and we had sort of forecasted what that benefit might be. And we were able to track refund amounts for returns filed, and 91% of participants received a refund or owed nothing. Refunds ranged from $75 to $4,291. 15 returns had a balance owing, and a total of over $82,000, $82,446 in refunds were received across everyone in the clinic. $7,394 were balances owing. So the total economic benefit to participants and to our community was just over $75,000, which was in line with Nelson Community Food Center also ran a clinic last year, and they had supported about half of the number of participants that we were able to serve, and we've it was about twice as much that we brought into the community, into participants' lives. So that's the measurable economic benefit. But I also wanted to highlight the economic, the economic benefit that was not measured, which are refundable tax credits and tax benefits. So tax refunds are only one indicator of economic benefit of hosting a tax clinic. Other benefits accessed by filing taxes these are worth noting. So refundable tax credits, most, but not all, were tracked. We just had some metrics, hiccups in the beginning that we got sorted, so we weren't able to track all of them, but most of them were tracked. And it's estimated to be an additional $75,000. So that's the GST credit, climate action credit, which is available to everyone filing a return, the BC credit, the BC rental credit, the workers credit, which is available to many low-income community members. So people were accessing these credits that they wouldn't have normally accessed. Tax benefits. We were not able to measure tax benefits, which are, for obvious reasons, they're calculated by provincial and federal government based on annual income, so you have to file your tax return to get your tax benefits. And so EI, CPP, old age security, disability, and social assistance continues. Filing taxes enables people to continue to be eligible to receive benefits, which for some people were their only source of income. And so, we were able to support people. We were able to do some outreach too. We were able to support people that were street entrenched, and we were able to support a few folks that were in hospital in between housing situations. And so there's that piece too, that if you don't file your taxes for a variety of reasons, because you can't even get to the free tax clinic, that outreach piece was really helpful, because otherwise there's no income to be claimed, therefore there's no social assistance or old age security to be to be received. So those are a few of the economic benefits that we weren't able to measure. And enhanced model. So this enhanced model, basically, Sam had mentioned that the living wage income threshold was higher. Self-employment returns were filed, which is not part of a standard CVITP clinic. And we also spent time one-on-one with every participant, walking through their tax return, walking through what they received, why they received it, as an information education piece. And so with that, with the living wage threshold being higher, 12% of participants claimed an income that fell between the standard CVITP income threshold and this clinic's income threshold. So 12% doesn't sound like an outstanding amount. Why only 12%? One of the things that we found, there's no local nonprofits who provide in-person group services specifically to low-income self-employed residents. So that promotion piece came into play there. So making in-person promotion and recruitment a challenge. We did go through some nonprofits that do communicate with self-employed individuals, but we really found that in-person of, hi, have you filed your taxes yet? Would you like to learn a little bit about this? Making eye contact, being in person is a huge, huge benefit for any, and I've done other work with more vulnerable community members, and it's the same thing, that in-person piece is gold. And so I think that might explain why the living wage income threshold, we weren't able to support a higher percentage, which we hoped to support, because we had some challenges actually promoting to that demographic. Self-employed returns, 7% claim self-employment income. Why 7%? One of the reasons was the promotion, again, same piece. We had difficulty promoting to that demographic. And the other piece is that when filing taxes, you can also claim taxes under about $5,000 is you can claim as other income. And participants with self-employed income of less than $2,000 and no deductions declared self-employment income as other income on their tax return to simplify the tax process, just to keep it simple and straightforward for everybody involved. Tax resources, tax knowledge, again, meeting with people in person and walking through, this is your return, this is what you got, this is why you got this is things to keep in mind for next year. We did that. So we offered that informational educational component to help demystify the tax process to newcomers and anyone interested in learning more about how the Canadian tax system works. So everybody was self-determining, what are you interested in? Would you like to be walked through your tax return? And most people, other than people who have been filing for a long time, but many of the participants had said, yeah, we'd love to learn more. And so then we did a survey. We did a pre-clinic and a post-clinic survey. And the post-clinic survey, there's 3 questions asked. One was the benefits of tax filing. The second was how to file your tax return. And the third was how to maximize returns. And 19 to 21% of those 3 questions, people indicated an increase in knowledge. And so we know that having that in-person component help people learn more about their taxes and why and how to maximize them, the returns. Okay. Continuity and scalability. So we conducted the clinic, and we feel that it went well. But the next piece, too, is like, well, what next? What's after the clinic? What about continuity? What happens now that the clinic is done and we have all this information that we've gathered? So what we did is we created a guide for local organizations, and local not being just in Nelson, it could be anywhere really in Canada, but sort of definitely focused our promotion in the region and the Columbia Basin, to use as a handrail for delivering an enhanced tax clinic. The guide is a primer for any organization to implement a similar enhanced CVITP clinic. So utilizing CVITP clinic and all the history they have, all the expertise, but enhancing it, right? Making it accessible to a broader demographic. And we hope to see this clinic reproduced and developed further in the years to come, locally, regionally, and beyond that. And I just wanted to share that the guide is actually, Emma's going to talk about it a little bit, but where you can locate the guide. But I wanted to share that it's only a 4-page guide, on how to run a tax clinic for 2 months during tax season. And then it has 14 appendices in that. And the appendices are tools. They're resources for, if you haven't done it before, here's a template and form. Here's an intake form. Here's an eligibility form. Here's some metrics, helpful metrics to consider. Here's what to bring to pass on to your clients. There's role descriptions for team members. There's training information. And there's resource consideration, what to consider, what resources to consider for funding, for equipment, for staffing. And so all of that is in this guide, which is available online, and Emma's going to talk about. So over to Emma.
I'm just going to take some time just to share some feedback quickly. And so overall, participants had overwhelmingly positive things to say about accessing the tax clinic. Folks said it was so simple, one phone call. One person said quick and easy, grateful for this free service. Another said this clinic alleviated all the stress associated with the late tax filing. People said that the convenience of the location and being able to do some over-the-phone setup was appreciated. It was a fast and helpful process. The staff were amazing and so helpful. I wasn't sure where to begin, and they were able to walk me through every step of the process. So yeah, people had really, very positive things to say. 84% said that they enrolled because the clinic was free. 88% said that nothing would have made it easier to participate in the clinic. 92% said their tax preparer was very helpful, and 96% said that they'd use a tax clinic again. And so when looking beyond the pilot, we're really hoping for support in spreading the word. The Nelson Tax Help Clinic had a substantial impact on participants' economic well-being. And overall, this pilot demonstrated worthwhile, tangible, and measurable economic and educational benefits, which really underscore the value of expanding and refining the CVI-TP tax clinic model. And so there is, on the Nelson at its Best website, there's a write-up about the pilot that also has that link for the guide that can be utilized and shared. And so we ask that whenever possible, we can spread word about the guide and the importance of poverty reduction work locally and in other communities too. And we really feel that it's crucial to ensure that we're prioritizing poverty reduction efforts. And so we just ask for openness and continued support from the city in, in future economic empowerment and poverty reduction initiatives. So yeah, we just want to say again, thank you so much for your support with this project, and thanks for taking the time to listen to us. And we're happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you so much for coming in and giving a summary of your very obviously successful program this year. So Councillors Woodward and then Page.
Thank you, Mayor. So I was wondering if you don't file your taxes, like you were saying, there's people who hadn't filed their taxes for a long time. What does that stop you? Does it stop you from doing things? Does it curtail your choices in life? Just curious.
I'm just going to pull the mic my way. Basically, I think I'd mentioned it a little bit earlier. One of the things, Jesse, is that if you don't file your taxes, then you can't prove your income. So proving income for any type of provincial or federal government support is so that you don't access any of the benefits that are available through provincial and federal governments.
Supplemental?
Sure.
So by doing that, they've opened a door to further access. I was wondering, psychologically, how did you see people that they had completed something that was probably kind of a burden sitting there on their shoulders? Did you see this kind of sense of relief, I would imagine, for people?
I was trying to allude to that when I was talking about the in-person piece. That's such a beautiful piece, and that you can see people go, how much am I getting back? I thought I'd have penalties. I thought I wouldn't get anything back. I'm getting how much back? And these are people that said, oh, I can now send my son to soccer. Right? I didn't know how I pay for soccer camp, right? So yeah, absolutely. People were thankful, just so thankful. And one of the pieces too is that the team were all really great. The team all wanted to be there, right? Everybody wanted to support the participants and community members. So people were really welcoming and open and thoughtful. And so yeah, I think people really appreciated it.
Thank you for the work.
Councillor Page.
Thanks for having great work. I'm noticing within the guide that you guys have developed that you got funding from UBCM and Columbia Basin Trust specifically for the guide development component.
For the whole
thing.
The whole thing.
Was there some pot geared towards the development of this guide? This guide is excellent from what I've perused of it.
What was the question? Sorry, what was
Where'd you get the funding part? Was that above and beyond the tax plan? Did you get an additional amount of money?
No.
Really great work.
I just like to over-deliver. We did all this work all the time. Why would I just create that just for one-off use, right? And so the aim was, if we can make this easier for every other nonprofit to say, and that's why we're hoping that when you go and talk to other municipalities and say, you know what? There's this really great guide and there's a really great poverty reduction initiative. You're already leveraging CVI-TP resources, expertise, knowledge, long-standing, well-established history. And on top of that, there's this guide. It's fantastic. It helps people in the community. It makes our community a better place overall, right? And so I wanted that guide to do that. So your feedback is gold. Thank you very, very much for the feedback and help spread the word.
Supplementally, Have you sent this back upstream to UBCM as an example of some of the work that's been prepared? And have you reached out to the RDCK to give this presentation at the because this isn't just something that happens within Nelson, this happens within the region. So have you guys taken this on a roadshow to the RDCK as well?
No, but that's a great idea. That's a wonderful idea. The final report would have gone to UBC already. I'm not sure whether the meeting has happened with Columbia Basin yet. I think it's scheduled to happen still, so that will happen on that end. And I just wanted to say, I see Bill Metcalf is here, and we didn't know that we were going to get exposure last time, and I'm like, oh, geez, I didn't know we were going to be in the paper. And then when I did the survey, people had said, where did you, like one of the questions was, where did you hear about it? 11% had said, through the Nelson Star. And so thank you very much for that coverage. It was a real bonus. And thank you for the RDCK suggestion, Keith. I hadn't thought about that. It's a fantastic idea.
Just one quick last thing. Just because I'm going down to UBCM tomorrow, what funding came from, what was funded from the UBCM? Because it's in here in the report, it's in here in your guide that you got CBT funding and UBCM funding, so there must have been a community grant that you accessed. So I'd like to be able to tie this with staff back to.
Okay. I think generally UBCM funding primarily covered the vast majority of it.
Remember the program though?
Yeah, the community.
Oh, I didn't.
We could get it to you. I think it's strengthening communities.
It's probably the strength.
Yeah, I wasn't part of that. I hopped on board once that was all through, so.
If you
But we
could
can
send
get
me that,
that.
that'd be great. I think staff down there would really appreciate to see where some of this funding went, and I don't think this would be on their radar.
Okay.
And I think it's really good for anyone else who wants to run this program.
It was through the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction funding, right? So it was funneled through UBC. Right, so.
Communities in the name.
Yeah,
I know
so
that.
we want
I
more
just can't
communities to
remember.
do this kind of work. And this is great.
We're just trying to figure out what the name is here because it flows through. So somebody will come up with the name for you, Keith, and send it to you.
It would have been applied for through the city.
Yeah, it came through the city. We manage the money. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just that Sarah would normally manage that. We don't have Sarah sitting here tonight, so she would have just had it off like that, so. Yep. Anybody else have a question? Once again, thank you so much. He's gonna pitch when he's in Vancouver. And then his suggestion of the RDCK is a very good idea for you to go because you will get you'll get all other communities. You get Creston and Castlegar in terms of municipalities. So that would be very helpful, and that's how we spread the word.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
So much.
Send it to Keith. He just needs to know what the fund is. Probably Amy knows what the fund is because it flows through the.
My laptop is dying.
Oh, your laptop decided now she's on her phone. Okay.
4 years, 25,000 a year, I believe. It's a 4-year program, reducing poverty.
Yeah, she's trying to. Now she's working off her phone to try to find it because it flows through us. So.
Yeah, 25,000 a year for 4 years.
Yeah. He's just saying 50.
Poverty reduction planning and action program.
But isn't it 25,000 a year? So it's the second year in, so we're up 50 now, but there's 2 more years.
Yeah, got it. You got it.
Okay, and now we are on to delegation number 3 for the evening. Nature Canada Bird Friendly City Initiative. So Elizabeth Cunningham and John Snar, volunteers of Nature Canada, will provide an update to council on the progress they have made on the Bird Friendly City Initiative. Welcome, Elizabeth and John.
Hi, thank you for having me. So I'm here to give an update on the activities that our Bird Friendly City Committee has been working on since I last spoke to you. I wanted to begin with this video, but it's already seems to be proceeding here, so I don't know how to get it back to the beginning there. Let's see. I think I've got it now. Yeah. All right, so this is a video that, thank you. You're welcome. That the Nature Canada has prepared, and it makes available to the Bird Friendly City, people working on this initiative. And I just wanted to bring it as a kind of a reminder of what I've already presented to council at other times. And I just don't know how to get the sound going though, because that's a very important aspect of it.
I think we can just try this. Try it. We'll try this. It's really high tech.
It's on mute, so.
The sound is up on here.
Yeah, but there's a mute button on the screen.
That's the mic.
Okay, Mike, okay.
Where's the volume?
That's been up the whole time. I was wondering if we were on mute the whole time.
Yeah, the sound is full blast here.
And the computer.
Well, I kind of pointed it out at the beginning. And it was
Keith, yeah. The other tech guy.
We'll find out.
2 seconds. Thank you.
Is wrong. We can and must do something to help them recover. Birds in our cities need help. In the last 50 years, we've lost a quarter of the wild bird population, almost 3 billion birds across North America. Many of those deaths result from predation by cats and dogs, collisions with buildings and vehicles, pesticide use, and habitat loss, all things we can prevent or reduce. And many of the species facing decline are very familiar to backyard birders in towns and cities across Canada. The decline of these species is a huge red flag that something is wrong. We can and must do something to help them recover. Fortunately, cities and towns can do a lot to help birds survive and thrive. That's why Nature Canada is leading the way to help municipalities across the country to become certified bird-friendly cities. We believe that cities and towns across Canada can be safe places for birds where nature is restored, allowing populations to thrive, and where residents from all walks of life help and celebrate birds together. Nature Canada can help organize resources and develop policies that will help restore and protect bird populations in your communities. By joining the Bird Friendly City program, you can join dozens of other cities taking action to protect our feathered friends. Certification in the program will demonstrate to residents in your city or town how important birds are to the health and well-being of our communities and our planet.
So that little video, I think, summarizes the need for cities to protect the birds in the region. So what we've been doing since I last made a presentation here, I'm working towards things like establishing the bird team, a bird team. This is one of the initial criteria that's necessary to fill in the rubric that Nature Canada has provided, which I have sent to council, and I hope you had a chance to look at it. It is a list of many different aspects that need to be considered and worked on, whether with the bird team or in support from City Council or helping for some of these aspects. We need to address concerns such as protecting natural habitat, of course, reducing light pollution, and considering helping mitigate the predation of birds roaming cats and so on. We need to work with the community and city council to educate the public, and then we need to provide proof of meeting these criteria for Nature Canada in order to be certified as a bird-friendly city. So just to update the kind of things that I've been involved with since I last spoke to council, which is in April this year, briefly. Most of the things that I've been involved with, or we've been involved with as a team, have to do with community outreach to engage residents in actively admiring and monitoring the bird population. So this year I have given presentations at Learning in Retirement about the Bird Friendly City program, and also at the Earth Day celebrations at Tagum, and which I was also presented the idea of nominating a bird to be Nelson City Bird. This is one of the criteria for becoming certified by Nature Canada. We have to decide on a city bird. And so I gathered nominations for the city bird from throughout April, and the most votes came to the black-capped chickadee. We also participated in World Migratory Day at Creston Wildlife Center. That's one of the criteria for fulfilling the expectations. And then I've also organized a series of urban neighborhood nature walks, and two of them are centered on the bird population. And we're looking at the area, particularly between John's Walk and Red Sands. It's quite an important natural habitat for wildlife in general, and birds in particular. For instance, last Sunday we had a walk led by Galen Schnarr, and we had over 25 participants, and within 1.5 hours, we identified 31 species in that area, and 275 individuals. So quite a considerable number. And according to Galen, this is one of the most diverse and densely populated birding areas within our municipality. So looking at protecting natural habitats as well is a big part of this program. And then I've been working on growing the bird team, and then through these presentations and sort of activities, we now have over 50 team members, and 4 environmental organizations: the West Kootenay Climate Hub, West Kootenay Naturalist, Neighborhoods United, and Wildsite. They're all really interested in being part of the team and contributing and being involved with our activities, and so that's really significant that we have a lot of people already involved and willing to put in the time and the work involved. Other criteria that has been met since my last visit here is now the BC Marsh Monitoring Program has been introduced into the Kootenays. I went to a meeting up there at Kootenay, at Kokanee Provincial Park there, and it was a very interesting presentation, and that's very important in terms of monitoring the bird life and protecting the bird life in our region too. Habitat restoration program. Now there's plans for a native plant garden to be established at the Rosemont Art Gibbons Park with the engagement of the Nelson Daybreak Rotary Club. I also made a presentation to them over a year ago, and they are quite keen to support this program too. And this is one of the initiatives around that. And in the grain area, there's a number of tree swallow nests have been built, and that kind of activity is very helpful also in protecting the bird life within the region. So those are the main activities that we've been engaged with since I last spoke. I just wanted to say a couple other things. Some of the examples of important areas to address, which will need council support, and progressive municipal policies created to protect urban bird populations are things to do with threat reductions, for instance, reducing cat predation as best we can, reducing window collisions, light pollution, habitat protection and restoration, climate resiliency, with things like protecting the shorelines, reducing and removing plastics from the environment, more policies to protect nature, expansion of natural areas and protection of regional biodiversity, establishment of a bird diversity area, such as the one explored on Sunday between John's Walk and Red Sands. So another aspect of the criteria that need to be covered to be certified is community outreach and education. And John Schnarr is going to speak to that. But I just wanted to say before I sign off is what we need is at this point is to have council ratify the choice of the black-capped chickadee as the city bird, and then also to write a letter supporting Nelson becoming a bird-friendly city. It's a very short and sweet and simple, but we need to have a letter of support as part of that rubric and criteria. So that's why. Thank you very much.
Okey-doke. Is that on? Yes, I want to speak mainly just to the educational aspects of the program. Elizabeth mentioned that we've participated in World Migratory Day the last 2 years in making presentations in Nelson and in Creston. And Elizabeth had the grant with really good participation for the numbers of people participating in these neighborhood walks for bird observation. We participated in the Nature Kids program for teaching preschool children bird identification skills and simple use of binoculars and so forth at Duck Bay in this last year. We participated in shoreline cleanups and osprey monitoring with another local environmental group. We participated in the upgrade of the Chamber of Commerce's website by providing background and information to the birding section in their tourism promotion on their website. And it's also part of that participated in the production of a video entitled Bird of a Different Feather, which has to do with birding and enthusiasm for the outdoors life that Nelson has to offer as part of tourism promotion. We've been involved in 2 podcasts on Kootenai birds, one by local journalist Bob Keating and another by the Friends of Kootenai Lake. We presented a lecture to a large audience of about 150 people at the Learning and Retirement Center on birding the waterfront in Nelson that was well received. And we have 2 projects that we're aiming for the next year. One is we're hoping to convince a grade 12 student, some of you I'm sure are aware that grade 12 students have a capstone project. It's kind of a summation of their learning. We're hoping that we're going to be able to get a student who will take on a project, and we'll provide both some financial support and guidance in doing this project. Elizabeth mentioned cat predation is a serious issue for birds in any community. But at the moment, because there's not a lot of public education around that, there's probably not a huge amount of public awareness of that. What we'd like to do is to organize a presentation that would go to all of the elementary, middle school, and high schools, both public and private, with information, but also a hands-on approach about what can be done by kids in homes to put bells or crinkle collars on cats that has some effect on reducing predation, and some things that they could also make for window stickers and those sort of things that will reduce glass collisions, which is another serious threat for birds. So that's one aspect. And then another aspect that we took from the Nature Canada rubric has to do with Indigenous involvement. And we've tried to reach out, but we haven't gotten a lot of response. This year we're going to try to go through the Indigenous education teachers for the school district and see if we can come up with some sort of perhaps an arts-related project or a community project where we could tie Indigenous knowledge with protection of birds as well, and maybe introduce that either as presentations. It even occurred to me, I don't know, maybe there'd be somebody that would take on an aspect of that with the mural project. Maybe we could do something where we could tie Indigenous learning and bird imagery into a mural or something like that. So those are the 2 primary things that we're working on right now. We're very open to any members of council or community members who have ideas or suggestions about activities to raise local awareness. The whole program kind of operates on 2 levels. One is we've got to create the awareness in order to create a consensus about actions that we can take as a community to do this. And my limited political experience compared to yours, is that you need to build a consensus that something needs to be done about it before you start moving on with actions with it. So we're kind of at that phase of really trying to do both at the same time, but really do an underlying piece of education around protection of bird habitat and bird safety. And that's it for now. Elizabeth?
Thank you for your
Thank you.
presentation. Councillors, do you have any questions? Councillor Payne, Councillor Lockenberg.
Well, I just want to say it's extremely impressive to me, the amount of work that you've done around this. I read through the entire thing, and yeah, very exciting. When you made your first presentation, my interest was piqued, like a few things, but wow. I did have some questions from that, and one of them was about the demonstration garden, but it sounds like you're working on a location in Rosemont now at Art Gibbons Park. That's very exciting. And personal question is, where do I buy the things to put on my windows? Where do you buy that sort of thing? That's number one, just a personal thing, because I do have a huge kitchen window that I love watching the birds through, but I would hate to have one of them crashing in on me. And I'm just looking at I was just trying to find on the City of Nelson website, my nemesis, what our situation is around, like, we do have 2 cats, we bell them when they go outside, so so far they have not caught anything flying. Is that a bylaw within the city that cats need? So that's one of the pieces that we could work on then if we were going to proceed with this. Is that part of taking the predator piece away from cats, giving the bird a bit of a warning that they're coming?
Well, just in terms of where you purchase something to put on your windows, I really recommend going to the SPCA because you're supporting.
Thank you.
You're supporting them too, and they do have the products.
That would be great. Thank you.
So that's really recommended. I know Ellison's used to sell something that you could put on the windows. You can. There's a certain amount that you can do yourself, like put streamers in front of your windows that move in the wind. That's a simple way of doing it.
Okay, I'll head over
There's
to the
suggestions
SPCA.
even on Google, where you can just Google things about windows, and it'll give you suggestions for things you can even make yourself. And I believe Ellison's has, I don't know if they are right now, but they have in the past, they've had those crinkle collars. There's some evidence that the crinkle collars that kind of crinkle and shine are somewhat more effective than bells. Neither one of them is 100% effective. You know, there's a limit, but it's better than not. You know, it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
And I've been kind of questioned about building this consensus because you see a lot of cats wandering, and I don't know about building that political consensus that restricting that is an effective thing to do. But my son said to me the other day, he said, yeah, but you know, if you think about it, like 20 years ago, you saw dogs wandering around town, and how often do you ever see a dog wandering loose around town? Like, it's not a very common thing. So social attitudes towards those things do shift over time if people get information about what can be effectively
What's
done.
at risk?
Yeah. Also, those crinkle collars are available at the SPCA.
Okay.
And Grands for Grands sells them. So, yeah, but they're not 100% effective. But they could, yeah.
Councillor Lockwood, you were next.
Thank you for that presentation. In April, 3 of us went to a presentation at the AKBLG conference in Radium, where we met with a bird biologist who was working on a program studying the local populations of barn swallows in particular, and the significant collapse of that bird population. And it got me thinking how, you know, the metaphor of the canary in the coal mine is really apt when we think about the environmental crises that we're facing. When we're listening for the health of nature, we've got a clear signal in our bird population. And as a council, we made one of the pillars of our strategy to really prioritize the health of our regional ecosystem. And yet has struggled with figuring out how do you action that? Like, what are the things we can do to help encourage and improve awareness around the ecosystem and the steps we can take as a city. And to me, when I first heard your presentation, and I thought this is a really great step because it does check off a lot of boxes, including public awareness and something in which we can look out our window or listen, in an early morning as the birds call. It sort of draws our attention back into nature and really reconnects us with that, which I think is a foundation for then doing more action. Like once you develop that love and the trust of nature around you, that you then have more incentive to take action. So I really applaud the work you're doing. I applaud this program. And I think what you've laid out for us is really great in terms of giving us as a council some clear steps to enable you to continue the work that you're doing towards making Nelson a bird-friendly city. So I just wanted to say thank you for all of that and use that as sort of a pretext to request that we refer this to a next business meeting so we can actually take the steps necessary.
Thank you very much for your support.
Councillor Tate.
Thanks so much for this work, you guys. I find it really interesting. I've been reading through this since the first time you came through, and I only just recently found that there's the what are they called? Sections and categories for large municipalities, and then there's a certification for the smaller municipalities. So there's 24 bird city friendlies in Canada right now, and just on my cursory glance, only 4 of them were under 15,000. So I'd be interested to know how those cities. I would be interested to take a look at their applications, which are available online.
Yes.
Because as I look at the 50 pages of categories and sections, I think a lot of the things that are already in place in Nelson check some of these boxes. And so as a municipality, the work that we've been doing for a long time and being so close to nature is on the right path. And then the work that you're doing, because you see it here, I was interested in their caveat that you have to recertify every 2 years. And at that 2-year mark, you have to show improvement. So I'm curious how these smaller municipalities every 2 years can find that improvement, because I think it will get more and more challenging for that recertification. But we'll see what Nature Canada does with that as we move forward and more people get on the bus.
Yes.
But overall, I think a lot of the policies that we already have in place in the parks and the community groups that spearhead this stuff we're checking a lot of boxes, and you guys are doing a great job of that. Like with many of the community groups that lead the way for Nelson to be the cool place that it is. So thanks very much.
Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have checked off a lot. Really good work, from the council on that.
Councillor Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. What I would like to see is cost benefit. It's something that's always rolling around in my head whenever I'm making decisions is cost benefit. Because it has to work, and it can't be incredibly arduous for Nelson. We have many things on the boil in Nelson.
I understand.
We're a complex town. We have a small staff. And so I really stress for you guys to look at our town individually, not what the bird-friendly city people are saying. Look at us. What are we already doing? Where is our populations at? How many animals do we have here? Like data that is Nelson-driven.
Definitely.
Because to take on something like this without that, we never do things without data. Everything here is just driven, I find, in the last 7 years of sitting here, driven by data and getting better every day with that process. So I would say for you guys is we really need data from our city, and we really need impacts. Like, what does it actually mean? And because when we make a decision here, it has a pretty major impact sometimes on a lot of different pieces in this town, and I'm always afraid of we make a decision and we lose something and we gain something, but that gain and loss has to work out. It can't just be a big loss for some part of town and a big gain for some group. It's got to balance out. So I just challenge you to try to bring it home, and what is it that we can do, and what is the data
Exactly.
from our town. Okay, thank you.
Very good advice. Thank you.
Councillor Lockenberg.
I'd like to move that we refer this to staff for some action to bring it back to us. It looks like we've got a couple of clear actions that we as a council can take to continue to advance and support the work that the bird team is doing. Particularly, I think, the ratifying the city official bird. I think that's really one of the next steps. But then I assume that's sort of sets the context for then you to do more work and then come back and potentially make some recommendations to us at a future date about the predation of cats, if there's something there. I'm assuming, to Councillor Woodward's point, that the bird team is going to continue to do a lion's share of the work, and what you're looking from the city staff and city council is just to enable you essentially
that's the case. Yes.
kind of get out of your way so you can make this happen.
We have our committees and we have our priorities and we have our goals, and we'd like to bring them when they need to be ratified.
Yeah, absolutely.
We need that support.
So, Councillor Lockenberg has moved. Is there a seconder? Councillor Page, sorry.
First time tonight.
Only once tonight so far. I
way
think
to
that's pretty
go.
good.
That's good.
A couple of concerns that I have, and perhaps your team can go out and address them, is I see, and it's spurred on by Councillor Woodward and his thoughts, is this something happens here, but something happens there, and the rule of unintended consequences. And I don't know if you've talked with the Ursa Society, and I think that the bear interaction is an issue here in terms of we have a group that would like to see, and it could be sound information that, you know, fruit trees need to be taken down. Feral fruit trees should be taken down. We also have, I read and hear about bird feeders. Bird feeders are an attractant for bears. So, you know, we have more than just birds. So when we talk about the natural environment here in Nelson, we have sometimes competing interests. You know, we've now had this move forward for further discussion at a business meeting, because this, as you know, and we've told you before, that at a committee of the whole, we don't do business. I mean, so we will have a more fulsome discussion now at a business meeting where we look at what we can do. But I just have to say that Ursa has been here to ask for us to make Nelson a bear-friendly city. And so it's a bit problematic in my mind to pick one above the other, perhaps. I mean, there's just the unintended consequences of what the two groups are asking for, because there is kind of a little bit of some loggerheads here that I see when I read what makes a bird-friendly community versus what makes a bear-friendly community. So, you know, it's just problematic in my mind in terms of things, and I think you need to be discussing with these other agencies that are also interested in protecting the natural environment and ensuring that we are not, as our Wild Safe coordinator calls it, dispatching any more bears. I think these are all things that have to be weighed, and will have to be part of the discussion when we bring this back to council. I would ask the mover if we could have some leniency in terms of the fact that there are legislative changes here. I've read through this that have to occur, and that's what you need us to do. And we have to have time to figure out who we assign this to, because we are, as we often talk about at meetings, we are swamped. And we are short some people in the planning department that might be key to looking at these legislative changes that would be required. So I'm asking the mover for some leniency in terms of when he wants this brought back, or is he firm that it has to be brought back in August?
I'm I'm not saying August, but I am pretty firm. I don't think what we're asking for is any legislative changes. What we're looking for is ratification of the bird-friendly city, of which they've already done all the work. I'm sorry, not bird-friendly city, of the official bird, which they've already done the work. I mean, the report that needs to be written up is essentially written, right, itself. So I think at least this could be dispatching. I'm really concerned about blocking, and I think, there's a tendency to not recognize when we might be slowing momentum unnecessarily. A little bit of work on our part unlocks a whole lot of momentum and energy on other people's parts, and I think this is one of those cases. So I'd like to see this move pretty quick personally, but of course it's the will of council. I'm just one voice on this one.
Well, I mean, it's quite clear what the procedural bylaw says, and it says that it has to come back at the next meeting. That's why, as the mover, I'm asking you for the potential that we could look at September or October. I'm just...
Totally. It doesn't have to, like I said, it doesn't have to be in the next business meeting, but certainly not some distant future. I think...
The seconder wants to speak, but I don't want to violate the procedural bylaw, and you've asked for something. We have this.
I'm happy to wait till September, October.
Councillor Page?
I'm okay having this on a slow track, and I'll say why. I appreciate the 81 people who voted for the black-head chickadee.
Black-capped.
Yeah.
Black-capped chickadee. But in consideration of the support of our wildlife and how we do that, I'm not necessarily sure that's where we would necessarily want to land. Is there potentially, and this would be discussion when we were having that, is there a bird that needs special attention because it's endangered? Is there a bird that is a keystone species inside of an ecological system that's under threat? Is there a bird that has a historical and indigenous history with the city of Nelson that I'm unaware of? Like 81 people from a popular perspective voted for the black-capped chickadee, but I think there's other things to be considered. And if there's conflict with other wildlife protection initiatives, how we look at that holistically is also really important. And so I would be a little bit hesitant to say we must go fast. I want to support your guys' work, but to me also, like, whatever we declare to be the city bird is going to be the city bird for like 200 years. So kind of also want to get it right too, and have a little bit more of a conversation about why this bird and what it represents, aside from just being bird
It was
friendly.
just a nomination that was open to the public, and that's how.
There was one public process.
It's a public process.
Councillor Page,
So I September even could be too fast for me. I'm okay with a while.
I mean, it's been referred now, and I just don't want anybody coming to me afterwards and saying the procedural bylaw says X. I just needed to get that out on the table. So I'm hearing that it's not coming back on August the 20th at this point. Councillor Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. I like the idea. I'm feeling very cautious about the workloads we have. We all know how much is going on in the city, and I want to be very careful that we aren't pushing things that are vital to the side to deal with this particular piece, especially considering we are short-staffed in planning, which is a key component for everything that happens in the city. So I'm asking for you to be patient. Things take a while to be done at the city, and we move slowly for a good reason, which is we don't want to make mistakes, and we don't want to push things aside that need to be done now for something that is the flavor of the moment. So I'm asking for, as the mayor is, for patience, and there are, it's just, like I said before, it's cost benefit, and it's what we can do as a staff, and it's what is burning brightest, the most important thing that needs to be taken care of now, and something shouldn't overtake that. So I'm asking for some patience.
So
I have a question for the presenters.
Okay.
I'm going to riff off that. So I have a curiosity, because when I looked at the 50-page one for small municipalities, I can see that there's a lot of points there already. And I have a curiosity.
do you feel in your heart you need the bird-friendly sticker? Or do you want to see the actions done? Because a lot of the actions seem like they're happening, and you're doing some of them. And I just have a curiosity about the stamp of the certification, and my brain goes a little bit to the recertification and a little bit to all of those like moving pieces where I think like there's two things in here that say bylaw, but you don't have to do everything in here to get the certification. But then you can also be doing things and not get the certification. So I just have a curiosity about, like, this is almost like a handbook to be better to birds, whether or not you apply for the certification. So I had a curiosity about that type of momentum, keeping in mind, as a municipality, we've got a lot of big, heavy pots on the stove right now. We just do. We do. So how does that sit with you when I kind of make that suggestion?
Interesting.
That's a good point. I mean, the sort of, it's like anything else. You win an award, you get a stamp. You know, you get jelly beans, whatever. It's that the only thing, thing that moving forward to officializing this at some point.
Right. Yeah.
Does have a tendency to build momentum that has effect in broader areas than just Nelson as well. So is there a motivation to try to move this forward to certification as a bird-friendly city at some point? Yeah, because we're in the business of trying to move this to broaden this much to a much larger level. Is it? But as your point is, is it critical to have the stamp of certification in order to be able to be doing things that are helpful to birds? No. I mean, there's many things that you can do without getting that stamp. Moving towards it, but it's like kind of any other kind of improvement, whether it's in transportation or environmental protection or any city function. If there is a standard out there that you're moving towards, that is a criteria or a standard that you're moving towards, is it more likely that you're going to move in that direction? Yes, probably it is. I'm sure, like you've got some significant cost coming with the sewage treatment plant. I don't know where that's going. But I'm sure that out there's some sort of a certification for what is adequate for a city this size. Do you just say, well, we're going to make some improvements on it? That would be good. If you've got a set of standards out there that we're making an effort to meet, is it probably going to move more quickly and more effectively? Hopefully, because even other municipalities have moved along that path. If there have been errors that they've made or things that they've had particular difficulties with, if you're moving towards a certain standard in almost any community function, it's more likely that you're going to be successful in getting there. So I guess the answer is twofold. I get it that we can do lots of things without the certification. Is moving towards that certification gradually useful in terms of building impetus? Yeah, I think it is. We would like to see us move in that direction, but that doesn't halt us from doing things. For example, something like declaring a city bird, and I appreciate what you said about how that was arrived at. But there's no initial cost. There's probably not that I anticipate initially. Conflict over declaring a city bird is probably minimal. I think. So there's some things we could do. I'm not sure what that was, but I think it's no, unless somebody was really stuck on the woodpecker.
You just never know.
Never know. This is
in
Nelson.
any
Go on, you've been here for a long
organization,
time.
if you've got a set of criteria that you're moving forward to in some facet of your operation, is it more likely that you're going to be successful in getting there? Probably, in almost anything, any kind of organization we're working with. So the answer is yes, we'd like to move forward towards certification. Does that mean that it comes to a halt if we don't get it? No.
Yeah, the other thing to consider, I think, is that many of the things that are on that rubric that are working towards really work together with things like City Council is doing already, like the Nelson Next program. So we would like to support that and work with you on those kind of things. So it's not separate from what you're doing. I think it's just hoping to help that move forward and engage more of the population through the educational programs. That's where we need the backup, and the momentum. And I think Nature Canada has provided a really good framework to work with so that people can look it up, or we can see what other municipalities have done and work in that way. It's very, very helpful to have all that kind of support and background, backup too.
Just quickly say, can I just, what I'm hearing sort of around the table is, there's a list of things that could be done. Some could be done by volunteer groups. Some you may want the city to be involved. So kind of developing what that plan looks like, and what you would pick up as volunteers, where you would see the city involved when that happens. I think that would bring a lot more clarity, because right now there's a list of 50 things
pages, yeah.
and no one around this table really knows kind of what's the strategy to approach those 50 things, how much staff time or regulation you're looking at versus, no, we can, this is more about education. We can, our first year is all about educating people and making sure they're aware of all these things or whatever. So if that was built out a little bit more, I think it would be clear what you're asking of council.
What if we took the rubric and tried to analyze it in terms, and we're not going to be the experts in this because we're not in government, right? But if we tried to analyze those in terms of which goals would have any potential for cost, for the cost in terms of time or monetarily for the city, and ones that didn't. And then kind of,
and just what that timeline looks like.
But then you guys would probably have, I'm not on council, I'm no expert on that, but I think we could use a common sense approach to it.
Yeah.
These things potentially could cost some money or could cost some time at some point. These other ones don't cost any money and wouldn't, for example, I don't think that getting the city bird approved, there's not going to be any cost in that.
You're not looking at the 50-page
There
one?
could be some other, but as Councilor Page said, yes, there could be some other issues around it, somebody could object to the process, which I'm sure happens to you guys all the time. Yeah. But would that be beneficial if we went through those criteria and came back with this one could have some impact on cost or could have some impact on time of staff or something like that, with some sort of a rating system, like, something like that? You guys would have to review that to see whether we know what we're talking about.
I think that, John, those are all great ideas to sort of parse out, and I think the key question there is what Councillor Tate asked, and that is about, there's 50 criteria, you meet 35, and you didn't get the sticker. It's like to look at those small communities and see what it was that they actually got accomplished that then got them this certification. But I just want to, we could debate this for quite a while, but the whole thing is this was for you to come and present to us where you're at, what you've been doing. It's been moved and seconded to refer this. So it's now on the docket. It's not on anybody's work schedule at this point, but it's been moved and seconded. We're going to have a vote. We'll see how the vote goes, and if it carries, then it's going to be there. And then any information that you have, I think probably the easiest would be to come back to Sarah if they prioritize that.
Yeah, I think we'll reach out and have some conversations around.
It'll be with staff. You don't have to come back to council with your list, but you're obviously doing this work in the community, and I think I would encourage you to continue to be out there and being proactive and informing people about what they can do to make it a more bird friendly. I love the idea that you're doing these field walks. So it's all good work, but we are the city council, and we do have to weigh these competing needs, not only just with our staff, but with all of the nature that surrounds us here in the region. So
can I ask, and maybe Councillor Luchtenberg can answer this, or maybe you have already answered it and I wasn't clear. Does it have to get referred to another business meeting, or can the conversations about, hey, this is the package we're looking at, yada, 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 these are the goals we might have, and then not yet refer to a next or future business meeting until those conversations have occurred? I'm just curious.
From my part, there's a couple things. The first is everything on this list presented is something we would want to do. Come on, they're just all good. The question is when. and in what order, and who does the work. What I'm seeing is that overwhelmingly, the work would be done by the bird team, and any work that would be done by city staff would be up to the city staff to decide and council to decide at that point that it comes up. So if the only issue we're talking about at this point is the city bird, again, the bird team can take the lead on that if we want a further public consultation, and then even do lion's share of the work before it comes to staff to then for approval at council.
I think,
Again, I would say that what we're talking about here in terms of referring it to the next meeting isn't declaring that Nelson is a bird-friendly city. It's not committing staff to anything. It's not committing staff to any resources. It's about what's the next step that we, as a council and staff, feel we have the capacity to do to support the bird team to continue their great work. So it's not, we don't have to blow this up to anything bigger than it is. You know, we can take this one step at a time, and as we take that first step, we may then look to, with more information, look to the bird team to say, okay, as we're saying here today, we'd like to see more about what the future looks like before we take the step beyond that. Like, what are the potential legislative consequences, like a bylaw around, which I think we've already done many of these things, but some of the things we haven't done, what is important to get us the points we need to get the next certification, and then we'll have that discussion then. Again, we're not talking about committing staff or council to anything beyond what the next
I do
first
think,
step
Rick,
is.
that it does need to come back to council for a discussion about the selection of the bird.
Yeah.
So it does have to come back to a business meeting, because we do have to.
Yeah.
We have
Well,
to
I'm-
approve
I'm
that.
agreeing with that.
So that's where I think I'd like to leave this. There's lots more that might come back when staff come back with that, but that's what I keep hearing is the ask, but that has to come to a business meeting. So
Yep.
it's now been moved and seconded.
And just for clarification, again, there's some staff discretion here on what comes back to
Right.
council. So what staff might come back to and say, you know what, after talking with the bird team, the choice of the black-capped chickadee, we've got some questions about that process. We think you should go back, bird team, and do a round two, with more awareness raising. That might be the case, in which case that's all they're doing is they're coming back to report to us that they've asked the bird team to do the next round. So I'm not overcommitting staff, I'm not overcommitting council to then ratify the black cat chickadee to
But we have to have that information. So we have to regardless, it has to come back to a business
agree.
meeting, even if that's the only thing that we do regarding
I agree.
bird-friendly cities.
Yeah.
Is to pick a bird. It still needs to come back to council. It's
Yep.
been moved and seconded, but I'd like to call the vote, otherwise we're gonna be here for a very long night.
Please.
So it's been moved and seconded, and I'm sorry, I see somebody in the audience with their hand up, and I just need to explain this. We don't have public engagement during the meetings. Like, if you wanted to talk, you would have had to have talked at public time, which was at the beginning of the meeting. So my apologies, I always hate that when I see people in the back wanting to make a comment, but it has to be during the appropriate time. So, councillors, it's been moved and seconded.
Very quick.
I've heard you say that before, Councillor Payne, but
Can I just ask how you're funded? Do you have funding? It's all volunteer.
No, it's
Thank
all
you.
volunteer.
Quick enough?
It's all
that was
very
pretty good. Okay.
Thank you.
All those in favor of referral?
I think, I can't remember.
We're referring it to a next business meeting.
Or, no, a future business meeting.
Future.
And all those opposed? It fails. So referral fails. Okay, I want to thank you for coming. Please don't think that your work is for naught, but we will carry on and have, no doubt, future discussions about birds in the city of Nelson. And there was no late items. And therefore, if I could have a resolution to adjourn. It's moved by Councillor Tate, seconded by Councillor Woodward. All those in favor of adjournment? And that carries. 5 minutes, and we have a special meeting followed by an in-camera.
Special.
Special meeting of the F-Sport.
Special.
I have no idea. What?
It's released from the RCKs.
Yeah.
It's discussed here.
We have this amazing organization of 60 people.
But it's a done deal. You guys can. Yeah, but it's done. When are they going to
I'm very
release it?
surprised. We just spent a lot of time to do it. That was parts of our lives we're not getting back. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna walk up and down the hall.
Great, great.
Fucking astonished.
Do you think we need to report it?
Well,
How much is it going to cost us?
the 65,000 coming out of Area G's cash and lieu.
Yeah, but what are we?
It's going to be your camera portion.
What are we
Camera,
going
she has
to?
to step out.
Yeah, well.
No, it's an open meeting right now. There's a special open meeting, and I have invited her to be here for the in-camera.
Okay.
Part of the in-camera. Yeah. So she might have to step out for part of the in-camera and then. Yeah, sure.